The Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Tuesday, August 26, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, in studio, co-host along with my son, Joe Hagmann, fellow investigator, researcher, co-host, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of incredible programming, unbiased, uncensored news, information, and analysis of the news that you will not hear elsewhere. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D format. We look beyond the headlines and bylines, bring you the news behind the news. So get your glasses, get your 3D glasses ready. Folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base, new home base, once again, we're populating it as we speak, is HagmannandHagmann.com. That's HagmannandHagmann.com. Folks, bookmark that site. Begin to check that site on a regular basis because I will be releasing a lot of investigative reports there in Canada Free Press as well concurrently that I've been withholding, not deliberately necessarily, but for reasons that will be clear later. We're simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network, folks. You can tune us in there at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. I want to thank you for deliberately tuning into us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to us. I wrote a couple of notes out to some listeners today, thanking them for their support of us, their word-of-mouth support, their involvement, sending information, sending some books, sending their own books, sending white papers, sending their research to us. And we've got just so much that we're going through. I got to tell you, Joe, we've got one heck of a very intelligent audience. We really do. Some of the information out there that is very carefully thought out, carefully, just very, very methodically thought out and put together. So we want to say thank you.
Yes, it is. Tonight we're going to have Stan Deo on in the second hour, but this hour we are joined by Mr. Dave Hodges. I'm going to bring him on now. His website is thecommonsense.com, and Dave has a radio show that he does on Sunday nights, and he has lots of very content-rich fact articles and information that you need to know on his website. So bookmark that website. Check it daily, as there are so many things going on. He really has a gift for picking out what's important and getting to the bottom or getting the facts from these situations and sharing it with the public. And it's a much needed service at this time that we live in, with so much disinformation and lies coming out of all streams of communications.
He picked the wrong profession. Honestly, he should have been a detective in his, really, because I'll tell you something, the Agenda 21 depopulation report that he did, Obama has begun to systematically depopulate, deindustrialize the suburbs. Joe, article from, I think, 2 days ago about the former Assistant Secretary of Education. All of these articles, all of these reports that he's done are just incredible. And we did not publicize this for two reasons. Number one, this was kind of a quick, hey, could you come on and fill us in on what's on your radar, kind of a quick invite. But I'm glad we didn't, because we do have people that want to see us, want to shut us up, and we certainly like to spring people like Dave Hodges on the audience without the boarding. So, Dave, are you with us, my friend?
I am with us. It's great to be with you guys. And, hey, thanks for the Hagmann shirts. I'm proudly wearing mine.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Folks, to tell you where I'm at, how scattered I am sometimes, I said, hey, Dave, tell me again what size shirts you got, and he basically said, yeah, the size you sent me already. Thank you. Anyway.
I know the feeling. We're both meeting ourselves coming in the door.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Well, Dave, on thecommonsenseshow.com, on your website, you've got so much. It's a content-rich site with so much well, this is your investigative work. What's most important here? As I'm looking through your listing of articles, what's on your radar the highest?
Actually, all of it. Because it's all working together, for a final conclusion, which is to depopulate the human race and then usher in a satanic era of transhumanism where God knows what awaits us as the elite try to meld themselves in combination with machines and technology to become whatever, and they try to destroy our souls and morph us into something that they can turn into slaves, and that's those who let us survive. But before we get there, we're fighting a whole lot of wars. And I go back to 2011 when Zbigniew Brzezinski was quoted at a Bilderberg meeting as saying that the people are waking up and we need to accelerate our plans. And I've been in the broadcast business now, roughly since about 2007, maybe even 2006. And I have never seen such an acceleration of the New World Order agenda as we're looking at right now. We're literally being attacked on so many fronts, it's even hard to keep track of. I mean, if it's not the border and MS-13 and the Sinaloa cartels coming in, it's Ebola in the country, it's this Agenda 21 depopulation issue. China's showing us what our future is, but we're already implementing it here under a program called America 2050. And it's all important, guys. It's all working together. And there's an old saying, all things work together for good. Well, it's also true on the flip side of the coin. All things are working together for satanic evil.
No, you got that right, my friend. Yeah, and you're right about the acceleration. I noted, I can't remember who's the author. Oh, here it is right here. Webster Griffin Tarpley wrote Obama, the Postmodern Coup, and in there was Brzezinski. He quoted Brzezinski from 2008 talking about the globalist agenda and how Obama would fit into this. And I thought, wow, I just happened to read that earlier this morning, and I thought, my goodness, this is just so incredible. Everything is kind of fitting together now as we see this, really, the curtain being pulled back. We're heading for some serious bumpy roads in the future. Dave, what do you make of the ISIS threat to the United States that everyone is talking about?
Nailed it, and I've said so in a couple of my articles. In fact, when Steve Quayle picks up most of my articles, and I had written about ISIS as a contributor to launching World War III because it'll give Obama the backdoor way into Syria. You nailed that last spring. You and Joe nailed that right here on your show, and you put it into print, and you guys were right on the money with that. ISIS will open up Syria. We'll have the excuse to go in. I mean, the so-called, and I don't know if it's real or not real, there's a lot of doubts about the so-called execution of James Foley. You've got ISIS killing Christians in this murderous swath through Iraq into Syria, and they're basically just doing propaganda. So the American people will say, yeah, it's time for the American military to go get ISIS, but the real target, is the government in Syria, and they're going to take that government out, and we're going to use that as a launching pad to go into Iran. Russia and China have promised to nuke us if we go into Syria, and I've always said the flashpoint for World War III will not be Ukraine, it will be in Syria. Now, if we get a foothold in Syria and we're able to get our medium and long-range missile batteries on the ground in there, Russia will not be moving into the Middle East. They would have no choice but to rely on their nuclear arsenal. And what I'm reading and the signs I get, and a lot of people are saying this, America has already employed a first strike strategy in this. But I do think Russia has options. I don't think Russia has to retaliate by going into Syria. They'll lose in Ukraine because they made the mistake of allowing NATO to get a foothold with all these war games. But Russia looks at across the Bering Strait and they see Alaska. They're defenseless thanks to Obama giving away 7 islands, minimizing the overflight patrols, minimizing the submarine patrols, closing base after base in Alaska. And the reports we get on the ground are numerous Russian soldiers already operating inside the country. So I think Russia could move on Alaska. And I think when this happens in Syria that China will move on Taiwan, which is a very valued target for them. And I think Japan's going to throw up the white flag and say, China, we're kind of with you, but we're not going to really fight, and we'll lose one of our big allies there in the region, and they could make it real messy for us.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And what we're seeing in our own government, over the last, 12, 15 years, the formation, and even before that with the funding of Al-Qaeda and these extreme Islamic groups, we're seeing the desired effect of what all that was about from its inception, from the Arab Spring to this caliphate that they're now engaged in. And it is of our creation, our help in doing, and I see reports of, and I wanted to get your comment on this, Dave. I don't know if you saw the latest reports of ISIS having drones, weaponized drones. Is that actually the case, that these people have drones that are capable of launching weapons? And if so, how and where did they get these from, or learn how to use them? That's a great
question, Joe. And I had a refrain in an article I recently wrote in which I included what you guys came out with on ISIS. But I had a real popular refrain, and what the refrain said was, ISIS is everywhere, as they've advertised, and that's because the CIA is everywhere. The ISIS is a CIA creation, just like Al-Qaeda, just like every other terrorist organization. They become the excuse to further our foreign policy and engage in a war of occupation. So you ask the question, where did the drones come from? Well, you have to look no farther than Langley. I mean, first of all, it's supposed to be government policy. When you abandon weapons, you don't leave them there for whoever can come and find them in Iraq. You're supposed to destroy them. That's policy. That's regulation. So the fact that they were able to get their foothold in Iraq by securing abandoned military equipment from the United States, it shows right there that this was a setup from day one. And, as some people call Al-Qaeda Al-Qaeda, the same thing's true for ISIS. I see no difference. So let's call it what it is. The CIA is in Syria. It's not ISIS. It's the CIA operation, and they want to provoke a war, a conflict. And if you really want to say who's really behind this, is it really Putin, versus Obama? To some extent, they're trapped in this game, but they both work for the banksters. And the banksters want World War III so they can reform the world politically, so they can dramatically decrease the population. And this is the pure definition of usher in the New World Order through a third world war. This is their ultimate goal.
Precisely. Going back to what you said about Ukraine and about Syria and about Brzezinski, I've got just to relate to what you said. There was a leaflet that was distributed in Manchester, New Hampshire, back in 2008. It was in January. It was the first public exposure of Obama as a Brzezinski puppet bent on world confrontation after taking power with a domestic U.S. color revolution. The pamphlet, it stated that then presidential candidate Barack Obama, main announced project so far was to bomb Pakistan. Well, it went on to say this: Obama's main foreign policy guru, Zbigniew Brzezinski, his main project is the destruction of Russia, the surest path to World War III. Now, Mark Brzezinski, which is Zbigniew Brzezinski's son, former Clinton NSC official and top Obama advisor, architect of 2004 People Power Color Revolution, which was the coup, by the way, the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, the destruction of Russia. That was attributed to Mark Brzezinski. And I just was looking back and seeing all of this information, seeing how it all fits together. We have been warned, haven't we?
We've been warned across the board. In fact, if I could just shift gears for a second to talk about warnings. The other day I was just having a mindless moment, and I was sitting on the couch, and I was waiting for my son to get done with some stuff so we could leave to go golf. And a replay of the old show 24 came on. And in this particular episode, or this series, It was from 2003 and 4, and it was about the Mexican drug cartels bringing in a virus into the United States that would be deadly if the star of the show, Jack Bauer, can't stop them. And who was the president? David Palmer. David Palmer, an African-American man. 2004, guys. Now, that means this was planned probably in 2002, since this was the 03-04 season. You want to talk about predictive programming? And what do we have going on our southern border? It is wide open, and all of my sources have been telling me for months, all summer long, they have been telling me there are 100,000 West Africans from the Ebola regions of the 7 countries that have that uncontained breakout. They are in Central America, and my 2 Border Patrol sources said they have processed some of them coming through. Well, how long is it going to be, as Dr. Jane Orient says, until one of these people brings Ebola? And let me take this just a step further. This even gets more nefarious. 5 years ago on my show, back in 2009, I was doing a whole lot of stuff on the H1N1 fraud, and I also had, still do, 2 high school friends, elementary school friends, guys I went to school with, played football with, who are high up in Colorado law enforcement. And I'd like for them to be able to retire, so I'm going to keep their names out of this. But they both told me, independently of each other, and they work hundreds of miles away from each other, and they both told me that in 2009, and Greg Evenson confirmed this is going on in other states, that they were doing roadblocks for vaccines. They set them up like the DUI roadblocks. They'd put the chase cars on the side, and they had a bus, and they would do these mock drills where they'd pull people out of cars, and they'd find out if they'd had the H1N1 vaccine that the government was talking about making mandatory, as they were making people in hospitals take it, the National Guard and so forth. And they practiced this in Colorado, and I got all the operational details from my 2 friends. Well, this is what I think is coming, and this is predictive programming right out of the show 24. They haven't practiced the roadblocks again. I've talked to both people, but they did both receive memos from Homeland Security to keep these procedures updated and to do any necessary training. And I get asked this question a lot. What's the flashpoint for martial law in the United States? Well, it could be a number of things. EMPs, go down the whole list, nuclear explosion, whatever it would be. But I think one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is this. I think we could have 1,000 Fergusons if the following happened. There's an Ebola outbreak, whether contained or contrived or how big it is, who can say. But the government uses this as an excuse to roll out the Monsanto vaccine. And yes, Monsanto is behind it. That was published and then retracted, and they ascribed the manufacturing of this vaccine they're working on to GSK and to Tecumar. Well, guess who Tecumar is being controlled by these days? Monsanto. They're just trying to keep the Monsanto name out, and they're going to roll out this vaccine for profits. And, just like the H1N1 vaccine, it had MF59 and squalene in there as the adjuvants, and it destroys your central nervous system. I expect something similar. And if they make these vaccines mandatory, and if they do engage in these DHS kind of roadblocks using local law enforcement, I can see widespread rioting. And that may be how we get martial law. So we're talking about predictive programming, Doug. That's one area where I think we really need to keep our eyes trained on.
Man. But I didn't think there was a vaccine against Ebola. Well, of course, you're talking about any type of contagion.
In process, and I wish I could tell you the day that I wrote the article, but it's in process, and it's been very well publicized. They're not hiding this. And it's there, and if you go to my website at thecommonsenseshow.com, and I got a search engine at the top, if you put in Ebola, I probably have written about Ebola probably about 6 times during the summer, but you'll come to this where I talk about Monsanto and Tecumar's involvement in this and how GSK came in after the fact. GlaxoSmithKline is GSK, and there is no question that they're going to roll out this vaccine. And here's what bothers me, Doug. One of my academic expertises, if I have any, is I used to teach until recently, and then I asked for a shift in my coursework. I used to teach graduate and undergraduate research classes. This is something I know. I'm professionally trained in this. And part of it is knowing about the medical model. To bring a vaccine to market takes 3 to 5 years. There is no such thing as I can do it 9 days, 9 months, 9 weeks. You can't do it in that time because first you got to clinically test it in the laboratory. You've got to do multiple control and experimental groups, and then you've got to repeat the design with an animal population. And then when you think you've got enough animal survival rate and you're not going to just butcher human beings by injecting them, then you bring in the volunteers who maybe have nothing to lose, and then you have to watch them for a period of weeks and months, assuming there's a survival rate, and then you might be ready for clinical trials. Minimum time to market is 3 months. And I know the research models that the CDC and the FDA is supposed to use, because I've taught them in my courses, and it can't be done by the first of the year, and that's what's being advertised. This is coming. Mandatory vaccines for Ebola is coming, and you can take it to the bank. I see all the signs, and the rehearsal for this, the beta test, was the H1N1 back in 2009.
That's going to cause that's going to cause incredible.
I mean, what bothers me about this is we have these, the World Health Organization, the CDC, all these people saying how bad this is and the potential for it to spread across not just the United States but across the world. Yet we see the what the regular precautions or standard operating procedures not being followed and do not match up with the level of emergency they say is out there. I mean, if this was this big of a deal, we would see planes and travel banned from certain countries to other countries. We would see certain things implemented so that they would be able to mitigate the spread of the disease. Instead, we don't see that, yet we have the urgency and we have the warnings and threats of this disease.
Well, when Patrick Sawyer, and I've dubbed this man Patient Zero, he may not be the first one to have contracted Ebola. In fact, I know he's not, but his sister did. He contracted it, and he was allowed in West Africa to be on 2 commuter planes where people are making connections. And I ran the math. I mean, it was something like 55 people that he was exposed to, and he got symptomatic on the second plane. And when you're having diarrhea and you're throwing up, it's now airborne, okay? Your sputum can spread Ebola. Doorknobs, it's called the dirty doorknob syndrome, that can spread Ebola. This man infected a good number of people on these planes, and I ran the numbers on this. 55 people going connecting flights to all over the world at 200 people per plane on average, and I started running the odds, and I said by noon that day 500,000 people were exposed. After he was on that second flight and got off and then eventually died, it was not contained. We should have at that point shut down all air travel. As bad as that is, if we're truly interested in keeping it out. But, guys, we're not even doing anything at the border. The idea, this is what the Border Patrol tells me, is that when this crisis started, if someone had the shivers, the shakes, a fever, whatever, they had Coast Guard medics there, not the CDC, not doctors, and this is what drove Dr. Jane Orient here from Arizona crazy, and she came out about this on my show. They put a yellow piece of tape down a room that separated the sick from the well, and they called that containment. I mean, it's a joke. We should be shutting the border down and quarantining everyone for at least 30 days because Ebola has an incubation period up to 21 days. So, but we're not doing anything. We're inviting the Ebola into the country. We absolutely are. I mean, there's just no two ways about it, guys. And we are in very, very big trouble. Ebola has a 60 to 90% fatality rate. It's not going to spread from what I've read and what I've been able to learn, the doctors I've talked to. I don't think we're going to see Dustin Hoffman's movie Outbreak come into fruition. I think, where they had that screen up on the movies, and they said in 12 hours it'll be here, and you have this line going across the country, in 48 hours Ebola will be everywhere. Now, most viruses burn themselves out in 30 days, and I don't think we're going to see a wild spread of Ebola, but we're going to see enough of it, and it could even be contrived. I mean, who's keeping ISIS out? The CIA out of the southern border? Who's keeping the West Africans out? I mean, nobody. So we're going to see it, and I'm thinking, well, they've tried to make vaccines mandatory before. I know they're working on them. I know that they've practiced the roadblocks from law enforcement people that I've talked to, people who I've known all my life. I just can't see how this is not coming.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And you've been very You've spoken prolifically about it, written about it. It's almost, Dave, it's almost as if, well, it's obvious they want it to come. I can think of no other reason. And the level of complicity, too, Dave, with this, to me, between the state governors, the federal government, certain state governors and the federal government, and a lot of the Gang of Eight and a lot of the senators and Congress people, to me, suggests that they are preparing a couple of things. And I'm seeing this, and let me ask you if you're getting this feeling as well of a rather imminent, when I say imminent, I don't mean tomorrow or next week, but sometime in the near term, a move of the center base of power from Washington, D.C. to Denver. I see that coming in the not-too-distant future. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, they practiced it in Operation Mountain Guardian in the fall of 2011. They shut down DIA, Denver International Airport. So that is absolutely coming. I think there's no question. By the way, guys, I did find the article that I wrote that implicates Monsanto's involvement in this vaccine. I've got, looking here at no less than 4 links, TKM Ebola, which is Tecomar, and I've got GSK involvement in this. It's right here, and the article was published on the Common Sense Show on August the 4th, and it was entitled, here, let me pull the title up, The Monsanto Ebola Vaccine Will Kill More People Than the Ebola Itself. And I based that allegation on what we know about the adjuvants that were added to the H1N1, which were deliberate. I mean, you talk to any doctor. My own personal physician told me if they made this vaccine mandatory, and he said this back in 2009, he said, I will not be giving this. He said, I'll retire to Breckenridge, Colorado. I'll ski and 10 bar. He said, I will not be giving this. And a lot of doctors took a stand against it because we know that these vaccines aren't safe when they come to market. And other people have looked at what those vaccines were with the MF59 and the squalene, and they said this was done on purpose, that any medical researcher would know that these substances have a debilitating effect on the central nervous system. And I suspect that when we break the Ebola vaccine down, when it does come out, we're going to find exactly the same thing. And the media is going to over-dramatize, of course, how bad the Ebola spread is, and they're going to try to scare everyone into taking it. And really what's behind it? It's a depopulation move. It's a move towards martial law. That's what I'm calling on this right now. And I don't think we're going to have real long to wait on this. I would suspect sometime between January and, let's say, April or May, just to throw some dates out there of next year, I think we'll be in the midst of this controversy.
Okay, let me back up here and make sure I've got the right article here. August 4th of 2014.
Yeah, and I've got a series of articles about Ebola during that time frame, plus or minus 2 weeks.
Right.
But one specifically, Doug, is August 4th, the Monsanto-sponsored Ebola vaccine will kill more people than the Ebola itself. And I go through and I detail here that an estimated seed money of $86 million was put into this. The company who's doing the fronting on the research is Tecomar Pharmaceutical Company, but basically Monsanto's calling the shots here. And I went through and I said, the reason they're trying to obscure Monsanto is because of the Monsanto name. There's a reason why we jokingly refer to them as Monsatan. And so they're trying to obscure Monsanto's involvement in this, which is really clear. And I think that this is the way it's going to go. Now, I don't tell the complete story in this article because I've got other stories surrounding it where I pull in bits and pieces. But if someone reads that article, they're going to get a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. And I talked about the roadblock scenarios in Colorado and how Greg Evenson came on my show and validated the fact that this was also going on in other states. And you know what these guys were told, these law enforcement people, and Greg knew this as well, too. One of the guys told me, one of the law enforcement officials from Colorado said, Dave, what's really interesting about this is they said if all hell breaks loose, they're going to take our families for safekeeping. And I said, you're not bothered by that? And he goes, yeah, I'm really bothered by that. I said, they're not taking your families for safekeeping. And he says, yeah, they're going to take them for hostages to make sure that we comply.
Well, the Department of Defense has just recently released on the 19th of August a new DoD detainee program, and we've seen the internment and resettlement operations document put out by the Army. The Department of Defense has issued many other similar type instruction manuals on how to deal with internees, whether they are civilian internees or belligerents, as they call them, or terrorists on the other end of the spectrum. But they all indicate that whether you're just a regular civilian who happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time to a terrorist, there's going to be some type of internment for civilians. And we know they've set up all these facilities across the country, and we see what's happening here. That, you know, as you said, the southern border completely unsecured. We have the Ebola threat. We have the ISIS situation going on in the Middle East, which they've threatened to, have create pandemics through terrorism here. And I can see how the militarization of the police and the certain situations where that has come out and have been used is, as a lot of people say, it's a conditioning aspect and also a blueprint for how the police are to handle these situations when they're called to implement martial law.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And one other thing I would add to what you're saying, Joe, is do you remember Obama issued an executive order stating that anyone who has any kind of respiratory distress can be quarantined?
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, so be careful who you cough in front of.
Well, I mean, here's a question that I've asked out loud, and I asked it out loud to my doctor. I said to him, are you aware of this? He goes, no, and I pulled it out and looked at it. He goes, oh, you're always making up stuff. And it was a joking moment, but he looked at it, and I had him read the executive order and a couple key passages, and he goes, oh, my God. And I said, so let me ask you something, Doc. I said, you got one of your asthma patients that comes in. Does this apply to them? And he goes, yeah, it would apply to them. He goes, this isn't just about TB. He said, it's general. And he said, we would be required, according to this, to report to the CDC any cases we have like this. So I said, well, I had pneumonia, pretty bad case of that, guys, about 5 years ago. Same doctor treating me. And I said, so remember when I had the pneumonia? I said, what would happen? He goes, I'd have to report it to the CDC, according to this, if an emergency was declared. So, in other words, they're setting up just to come snatch you for the most thinly veiled reasons right now. And people are going to push back. And we're looking at Ferguson going on right now, and that's a beta test unto itself. I mean, the L.A. riots, guys, only went on for 3 days. And Ferguson's passed the 2-week mark. It's a beta test, and I wrote about this. There are DHS provocateurs on both sides exacerbating the situation because they're studying crowd control methods on a widespread basis. And I said to myself, well, gee, what could they be practicing for? And that's where the Ebola thing just kind of crept into my mind. I guess I have too much free idle time, and my imagination, runs wild. But guys, I mean, I'm just convinced that this Ebola thing is going somewhere. The seed has been planted, and it's going to go crazy. And there's another case, too. Lady named Rebecca, and her last name escapes me, and I wrote about this. She was a TB patient in New York City Hospital, and she was homeless. And she used to be a pretty significant entertainer and song producer. And so she's in, and she's Rebecca Scott, that's her name, Rebecca Scott. And she was in the hospital, and she made a YouTube video. And boy, was it telling. They were releasing her pending tests. Now, this is something under Obamacare, guys, and this is influencing. She's on Medicaid, I think it was, and this also affects Medicare, as I found out. She's sitting in the hospital, and she has a positive diagnosis for TB. And you can see the video playing, and the doctors and nurses come in, and they have the surgical mask on. So, they're being very precautious around her. So anyway, they come in, and they tell her, well, you got to pack your bags, you're leaving. And she announced there, she said, yes, it's Obama's medical policy that when you're awaiting test results, and she was awaiting the test result on whether or not she had the communicable kind of TB or whether or not it was latent. And they had to discharge her because they couldn't keep her while they're waiting for the test results. Now, let's project that out for a second. If this is Obama's medical policy that you're brought in and you're symptomatic for a serious illness, they test you, they got to send you out to the general population. This is an invitation to spread a pandemic. One person is not a pandemic, but 10,000 people in these situations might.
But Dave, isn't that contradictory as to what we're just talking about in terms of not confiscation, but rounding people up that have the symptoms that you referenced?
Well, Doug, I would say don't think on a single-dimensional chessboard here. Let's do multidimensional. You know, on one level, they want the ability to quarantine and basically imprison anyone they say. But on the other level, they got to make this go somewhat viral. They got to have some kind of spread to legitimize what they're going to do to us with the vaccines and the quarantines and all that's coming. So if we look at it as a multidimensional plot, then to me it all fits together.
Very good.
The way you
Very
get it
well
spread, I mean, to me, I was stunned when I saw this, that all you got to do is maybe wait 48 hours for the lab test to come back for this lady, and you're either actively spreading or you're latent but could become active, and they're discharging her because it's Obama medical policy under Obamacare that you can't pay for hospitalization while you're awaiting test results. Well, can you imagine if this was Ebola? You present with Ebola, and maybe it's going to be 10, 12, 24 hours, so you put that person out on the street?
Oh, man.
This is crazy.
You're exactly right. This is multi-level in terms of its, the agenda, the playbook, the playboard is multi-level. You're exactly correct in this, for the desired objective.
Speaking back to the executive order you mentioned, it's executive order, revised list of quarantainable communicable diseases. It talks about the authority of the president to detain or quarantine anybody under the advisement of the director of the Health and Human Services with severe acute respiratory syndromes, which are diseases associated with fever and signs and symptoms of pneumonia or other respiratory illnesses capable of being transmitted from person to person that are either causing or have the potential to cause a pandemic.
If you have an upper respiratory infection, my doctor said that was enough under this language that he would have to report and stay within the letter of the law.
Oh, man. Would he do it? I mean, you know your doctor. Would he
No. He reads my articles every day.
Okay.
He's not doing it. He knew about the squalene, the MF59, and the whole thing, and he's been awake now for about 6 years. And
good to know.
Yeah, obviously I'm not going to identify him at this point, but a lot of people would know him. He's been prominent in sports medicine. And now he's kind of just taking a step back and just doing, family practice stuff, and still does a little bit with a professional team, but he's a prominent guy. This isn't just your neighborhood doctor. And people would know him in these circles if I said his name. Here's something else that I wanted to get out on your show, if it's okay, if I could shift gears just for a second.
You got the floor, my friend.
But just to put a cap on this latest thing here with Ebola, I'm encouraging people, if you think this sounds incredible, and I would. If I was listening to this for the first time, I'd say, Dave Hodges is really out there today. Go look it up, guys. Go read that article on August 4th on my website, and then go do your own research. And I couldn't put in all the research I found. Otherwise, I'd have had a 20,000-word article. So it's all there. And predictive programming, too. I just want to refresh people's memories of how that started in our discussion. In 2004, if you'd have told the country we're definitely going to have a black president, we have the possibility of having Mexican drug cartels or their affiliated forces with Hamas, and yes, they're related, bring in Ebola into the country. And this is all on the show 24. And this is all supposed to be believed that it's just one big coincidence. I don't think so. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to bring up, and it's been out there for a while. I know Rosa Corey talked about this a couple of years ago, but there wasn't the depth of information out there 2 years ago when Rosa first started talking about this that there is now. And I'm going to tell people, if you want to know what the postmodern society is going to look like, Go watch the Hunger Games first movie and the first 30 minutes. It's all right there. In fact, I'm writing an article in the morning, and this is the fourth part in a series that I've been doing on Agenda 21 and how they're going to get us into the stack and pack cities. It's called America 2050. You can go to their website, america2050.org, and they tell you. And it's all Agenda 21 that was in the Hunger Games, guys. And it's the bullet trains, it's the stack and pack apartments, it's the denial of technology for the average person, while the rich people living in capital city, which on the map they depict as Colorado. It's in the Colorado area. So, Doug, you're right on about Washington, D.C. to Colorado for the capital. It's all there in the Hunger Games. And here's something as kind of a sidebar note. I do not believe that Suzanne Collins wrote the plot for the movie The Hunger Games. And there's a companion author out there, not related to her, but writing about the same topics at the same time. Her name's Margaret Haydix, and my son had to read a couple of her books when he was in the 5th grade about 3 years ago, and it was about one-child policies, the calorie police, you can only eat so much, very New World Order, Agenda 21 stuff. And Suzanne Collins came out in the Hunger Games movie looking like an expert on Agenda 21. You could have knocked me over with a feather when I was watching the Hunger Games movie with my family. And even my wife, she's looking at me like, I can't believe we're seeing this here, that they're this open about it. Well, here's why I say Suzanne Collins and Margaret Haydix did not write these books that have been such bestsellers turned into movies, because the only thing that both of these authors ever wrote was child fantasy novels. They never did anything political in their life. This is the first and only time, and neither one of them give interviews. I know that Collins did a real bad interview, and she didn't say anything on Good Morning America. I couldn't get her publicist to call me back. And now Haydix is lesser known, and she would have benefited from coming on my show, and they wouldn't call me back. So I had a couple of other talk show hosts who were friends of mine call, and they wouldn't call them back either. And that's because these plots were handed to them, and these Agenda 21 books, later turned into movies, are predictive programming. And here's where this is going. Let's look across the Pacific Ocean and step over all the radiation on our way to China. And this has been a known fact for some time, but the details are beginning to emerge now. Chinese ghost cities, they're building about 10 a year, and they can hold anywhere from about 1 million to 4 to 5 million people. And now there's real data out there. Dateline out of Australia actually did a 15-minute segment on it, and that's on my website from an article that I did either 3 or 4 days ago, where I said the Chinese are giving us a glimpse into our Agenda 21 future. And here's what I've been able to now prove. I knew the rumors a year ago, and now you can prove it with documentation. The Chinese military, and they're having trouble with their outlying provinces, and if they have a revolution because of a bond failure from the United States that spreads into China and wrecks their economy, they won't be able to contain the outer areas of their provinces. So what they're doing in these provinces right now is a preemptive move. They're sending their military in, and they're putting 250,000 Chinese per week, that's 1 million per month, into these ghost cities. And the documentation is there. Goldman Sachs is behind the effort. Hank Paulson is involved. I mean, I've got quotes from them in this article that I've written. And the Chinese are populating now these ghost cities. Now, a lot of them still lie empty. Now, here's the scary part, guys, and I'm going to give you some numbers, and this is going to be a little more proof that there's depopulation coming. The Chinese right now have 65 million unoccupied micro-apartments, and the definition of a micro-apartment is 500 square feet or less. And we're seeing micro-apartments in this country, and I followed up with that with the 2 articles I've written in each of the last 2 days. The Chinese have 1.2 billion people. They have housing in these new cities for 65 million. That's concerning to me from a human standpoint. Where are the rest of the people going to live if they don't want them in these outlying provinces? And in the United States, there are plans to have 11 mega regions, or a lot of times they refer to them as mega cities. And listen, these are active projects right now, guys, being set up with these bullet trains and ushering in these micro houses. They have them in places like San Francisco. They call the plan Bay Area 1. and it's spurred by a guy named Mike Krulig, who Obama has hired to oversee this in an organization that he runs with Valerie Jarrett called Building One America. And Krulig was one of Obama's mentors in his community activist days on the south side of Chicago. So these communist ties run deep. Now, I want you to hear this clearly. 11 megacities with an estimated population of 6 million people each. I have a map of it on today's article on my website. It's the cover photo for the article. And America 2050 has actually published this map along with the transportation corridor. I mean, it's Agenda 21, guys. They have vast swaths of this land completely empty, 100% empty in vast stretches of this country. And you see where the 11 mega cities or mega regions are going to be. And let's do the math. 11 regions times 6 million people, that's 66 million people. Our population right now is 310 million people. Where are the rest of the people going to be? Are these the World War III casualties? Is this, I mean, your imagination can run wild when you start looking at the math this way.
66 million versus 300 plus million. Wow. That's incredible.
But here's the other thing. If you look at, there's vast areas like Oklahoma, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, the mid-regions of this country, a lot of the breadbasket, completely empty of people. It's all there. And it's right from these organizations that have active projects, federally sponsored money is in these projects right now to make this 11 super region come into fruition. I mean, guys, it's here right now. It's not like it's on the drawing board. They have active projects today, and they actively talk about it. If you go to a website, if you just put eco-cities into Google, ECO cities, eco-cities, eco-cities has a big hand in all this, and eco-cities talks about their 4-point principles for what they want to have America look like in the future. And in their third principle, and I have this in yesterday's article, it says relocation of population. There is no interpreting that phrase, relocation of population.
Very frightening, to say the least. When I say frightening, I mean it's frightening in the implications. Dave, I got to just tell you this. On the front of the Drudge Report, you probably had not had a chance to see this. Joe just pointed this out to me. Tomorrow's New York Times will read that Obama, and this is sort of what we're talking about here. Tomorrow's New York Times will read that Obama is working to forge sweeping international climate change agreement, but without constitutional requirement for Senate ratification of traditional treaty.
And pushing the UN's idea of what the rules should be or laws should be.
And the next step in this, and Patrick Wood, and I don't know if you've interviewed Patrick, he's a great interview. I've had him several times on my show, and he broke the story about the Trilateral Commission with Anthony Sutton back in the 70s with a book called Trilaterals over Washington. But Patrick Wood is an expert on the smart grid. And the next step in what you guys are talking about is smart grid technology, i.e. the smart meters on your houses that are going in are going to be the way that they reduce your energy usage inside your house. And when Obama came into office, he tried to get the Senate Democrats to get through a proposal to reduce energy usage in the United States by 80% by the year 2020. Well, it fell on its face. But this is their goal. They want you out of your cars, and I talk about this, and I believe 2 days ago in my article, the vehicle mileage tax. Building One America is in effect in St. Paul, Minnesota, along with Minneapolis and San Francisco and in New York City. It's all coming in, and what they're doing is they're taking several counties in a region, and they're taking their tax money and they're putting them into one pot, and they're redistributing the tax money into the core center areas. And they're saying, well, we're not going to spend any tax money in the suburbs, so your roads are going to fall apart, your infrastructure is going to be in disrepair, and we're going to charge you, to drive your vehicle to work. And it's their move to try to get people into the stack and packs. I mean, it's here right now, guys. This stuff is coming into place as we speak. And if people say, Dave, I just can't go with you on this, I don't believe you, go read my articles over the last 3 days and follow the hypertext links. They're all right there, and they'll take you right back to the organizations that are behind this.
That's one thing I've got to say about you, Dave. Any time that I read your articles, you always have the documentation, the citations to back up what you write. By the way, folks, I did put on our website, Hagmann and Hagmann.com, the link to Dave Hodges' article, "The Monsanto-sponsored Ebola vaccine will kill more people than the Ebola itself." For your ease of access, just go to Hagmann.com, click on that. It'll take you directly to Dave Hodges' article, and then read it all there. My goodness, you've done so much with respect to the covering all of this. I don't even know how you keep all of this straight, Dave. I really don't.
I have nephews, nieces, and a family. This is what motivates me. This is what drives me. When McCain and his friends tried to steal my land and that of 300 of my neighbors for the Canamex Corridor, international highway system that's actually part of this plan we're talking about, that's when I started discovering all this. And I just said, I can't live in a country that's like this. I can't expect the young people to live in this country who have no future. These kids have no future if we don't turn this back.
You're exactly correct, I'm very concerned about what's coming. I really am, because we are going to either have to fight or succumb, and I cannot see us in mass succumbing in mass to what's about to happen. I can't.
If they do the vaccines, I almost hope they do, Doug, and I don't mean to be so flamboyant here, and this is not hyperbole. If they do the mandatory vaccines in the way that I think they're coming, based on 2009, we'll have 1,000 Jeffersons across the country. Not for Jeffersons, but Fergusons across the country. We'll have rioting on a scale, and I don't like violence. I'm a nonviolent person. You know, I'm too old to fight and too fat to run, as I like to say. I actually ran a 5:40 when I was young. Today, you would basically time me with a calendar. I don't profit saying this. I don't want violence. I don't want people I care about getting hurt. I don't even want the bad guys to get hurt. But I'm afraid it's coming. And what could wake the country up is if they do something like this with the vaccines. The Ferguson events are disturbing, but if this is what it takes to preserve our way of life, our Christian heritage, and not succumb to these Satanists who are behind the New World Order, they're into child sex trafficking, child sacrifice, satanic rituals. I mean, this is what's coming, folks, if we let them win. This isn't just about losing a few battles here and there and some tax money and where you're ultimately going to live. This is about humanity's survival. This is the survival of our soul. This is ultimately good versus evil. This is Christ versus Satan, and this is how I've reduced it to the common denominator here. And I know that sounds dramatic, but these people are truly motivated. David Spangler of the UN, big guy in their eco conferences, always quoted. David Spangler said, "No one will come into the New World Order without accepting Lucifer. You will take a pledge to Lucifer." And that's a paraphrase of a quote that I've used several times. That's their mindset. And when we realize that, there will come a time when we realize we can't give in. To give in is our demise.
And people want us to believe that resistance is futile, that it's a fait accompli, which it's not. Go ahead, Joe. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I just wanted to ask or make this point that we see. I just saw a story, satanic black mass okayed in Oklahoma, and over this weekend, and I've been doing a lot of reading and studying, and a question came to my mind. Is it what's worse? Is it the satanic worshipers practicing openly that helps bring about more evil on this earth, or is it apathetic men or Christians who have no belief or touch with their spiritual higher power? And I would say that they're both the same, that there's no difference between Satan worshipers and Christian churchgoers who are spiritually dead, because what that is doing is bringing, and when we think about the mark of the beast and how the number of man, what they're doing is trying to get men to not have a spiritual relationship with the Lord. They're trying to bring them to their lowest common denominator, which is the mind of an animal or the mind of the carnal man.
I've had this discussion with Steve Quayle on air. I couldn't agree with you more. The churches are a shell of what they're supposed to be, and it's because they're basically run by the government, because they're tax-exempt foundations and subject to government censorship. Look it up, guys, 501c3. This is what they're all about now. And if your church is a tax-exempt foundation, you need to leave that church and form home Bible studies with like-minded Christians. And if we do that, we'll strengthen our faith, and God is more likely to intervene on our behalf if we show him as a nation that we may not have a collective church to stand up to evil, but individually we're willing to put on his armor and go to war in his name. If we're willing to do that, I think God may come in and move mountains.
I totally agree with you, my friend. Dave, you've been a very, very kind man for coming on short notice, but this is important information. Everyone needs to go to Dave Hodges' website, thecommonsenseshow.com. Let me say that again, thecommonsenseshow.com. Folks, bookmark that. Check that site daily. Dave's got breaking news all of the time, and his research is second to none, well-cited, well-documented, not hyperbole, and it's definitely rooted in the truth. Dave, thank you. Excuse
my
me.
pleasure.
Always
it's a pleasure to be with you guys on this great show.
Well, it's mutual, and tell the audience, Dave, your show airs every Sunday night.
Sunday night from 9 p.m. to midnight Central, and they can listen to it through my website. I've got to listen to Dave in the upper right-hand corner. It's pretty obvious when you're on the site.
Fantastic, and of course there's room for people there to advertise as well. And I'll tell you what, it's a very high traffic site, ranked very highly and very effective in terms of getting advertising and getting, of course, a great bang for your dollar. But I'll tell you what, Dave, fantastic content. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight. God bless you, and you stay safe out there, my friend.
Okay, anytime, guys. Thanks a lot.
God bless.
Thanks, Dave. With that,
folks, that was Dave Hodges. I just want to say that was Dave Hodges from thecommonsenseshow.com, thecommonsenseshow.com. If you go to Hagmann and Hagmann.com, the Monsanto story in which he referenced is linked, or is right on the front top of the article section there. You'll see it. It's fantastic. Well, not fantastic, I suppose. It's a very comprehensive read.
With that, we're going to go to our top of the gentleman, hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Tuesday, August 26, 2014. We are going to be joined by Stan Dale here in a second, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things that have happened as far as the Earth has been spitting out earthquakes, volcanoes, sinkholes, and Stan is with us. Hey, Stan, I just want to say this. I saw an article today from allnewspipeline.com that quotes you in an article on InfoWars you did with David Knight, and says that you have correctly predicted the recent immense earthquake that hit California, doing up to $1 billion of damage, and that your accuracy is about 90% on making predictions according to, as far as earthquakes are concerned, and that there's a 9.2, expert expects 9.2 plus magnitude earthquakes, possibly in the future, triggering up to 15 parallel faults. Lots happened since the last time you've been on geologically. Let's start with these earthquakes. You think that was a precursor in San Francisco to what is going to come on the West Coast?
You know, I don't know, Joe. The article is referencing what we were talking about there. I did make one huge mistake on the magnitude of that 9.2 compared to, say, a Richter 6. The guy asked me very quickly as we were going off air, would a 9-some-odd earthquake be maybe 1,000 times greater in energy than a Richter 6? I said, yeah, that sounds right. Well, actually, it's 32,000 times greater than a Richter 6. So the one in Napa, multiply the energy of that by 32,000 times, and that's what we're expecting up there in the Juan de Fuca Plate area when it goes. Now, is this a precursor to that? It's Maybe. It needs to be slightly higher at Eureka or in that area there into the Mendocino Fault that goes out into the Pacific from there for me to be concerned about it. But I am watching that area, and as yet, I don't think that we're at that point. But could be wrong.
Okay.
Don't make a mistake here.
A 9.2 earthquake in California. Question: would we feel that here in Erie, Pennsylvania?
Well, it's going to be probably in Oregon, Washington offshore, and then that will trigger earthquakes down along the Cascadia Range, as far as I know anyway. And again, this is going on, published data by USGS and other seismological studies that have been done. The New Madrid area is also starting to show a number of smaller quakes. I've noticed that they've concentrated more of their portable arrays for seismic detection in the area here in the last month or two. Same thing with Yellowstone. Certainly Oklahoma City seems to be connected to the New Madrid fault line with the patches of earthquakes in Arkansas. And we've talked about this on your show before, about the amount of fracking that's going on in Oklahoma City, or north of there a bit, but in that region, and saying, why are they doing such a thing to make such a bunch of small quakes? And it suddenly dawned on me yesterday, goodness gracious, the USGS has done this before for Australia, helping them out on the west coast near Perth, just north of Perth. I think it was back in 1978, as I recall, somewhere back there. There was going to be about a Richter 7.5, maybe a Richter 8 earthquake north of Perth. And at that time, it would have probably wiped out 75% of the buildings because they didn't have earthquake code in at that time in the buildings there. So the United States had some seismological teams over there with something else they were doing with Pine Gap and some other bases. So they dispatched them to start detonating smaller, TNT or dynamite type charges along known tributary fault lines to the one that was under stress and about to release. And the idea behind it was, all right, let's make a bunch of small, Richter 2 and 3 earthquakes to relieve the pressure so the big one doesn't just suddenly happen and throw a shockwave down there and wipe out 3/4 of the buildings in Perth. And they did do that, and Perth did not suffer a big earthquake. There was only the smaller ones up north of there, which were acceptable. Now, is this what they're doing now in all these fracking operations, where they're causing smaller earthquakes to relieve pressure in the area? And if that is so, then there must be pressure building up under Oklahoma City in that area and north of there. There must be pressure building up in Arkansas, and you can see where the concentrations of fracking-related earthquakes are in both Oklahoma and Arkansas on a kind of an indistinct line under the ground that connects them over to the New Madrid in the Mississippi River Valley in the Tennessee region. So I think that area is trying to be mitigated very quietly. Certainly at Yellowstone, they're doing the same thing there. Well, when I say they're doing the same thing there, they're kind of reporting it kind of low key, but all these things are related to changes in the core of the Earth, which I've mentioned a number of times, related to sinkholes and strange sounds, the trumpet sounds and that kind of stuff. More people are starting to get on board with what I've been talking about, and there have been a couple of unofficial leaks from people involved in this with the government to Linda Moulton Howe. And I just heard a broadcast of hers back in June where she was talking about what the insider had leaked. And he was talking about the core of the Earth is slightly egg-shaped. And this is in perfect keeping with what I would expect when the core starts to expand and the Earth starts to expand in diameter as a result. Because the gravitational vortex, if you wish, the spinning gravitational organizing field that clumps everything together into a planet, spins all the way to the center and then reverses. It's kind of like the inside of a smoke ring. If you track that, you'll see that the incoming layers feeding the smoke ring as it moves through the air curl around to the very center and then suddenly do an about face and go back out in between the incoming layer in the opposite direction. Now, this generates kind of a lazy S shape in the middle of that toroid ring in the donut part where you cut into it. This same kind of a shape I expect to see in the core of the Earth. Now, it's stable, or it was stable while nothing was happening, but as that starts to expand, it'll have two nodes equally, opposite each other that form on the surface of the core of the Earth as the expansion starts. It's not uniform. It'll start with those nodes and then even out once it reaches its expansion peak. So Linda Moultonhowe and her deep throat sources are saying the same thing, that these moving nodes are causing the trumpet sounds, the moaning sounds, the metallic screeching sounds, infrasound that bounces off the upper atmosphere and comes back as higher frequency sounds, that have been recorded in Russia and various other places in Europe and here. So, and sinkholes. Now, I don't know whether she related to sinkholes. I think she may. Yes, I think she did. But all this kind of is supporting what I've been telling you for over a year now, maybe longer, that the Earth's core is starting to expand and cause these sinkholes. I'm just going to give you a link here if I can find out where your thing is here on Skype. I'm going to send you a link on another thing too, which is Holly sent me the article, and she said, "Look at this. This guy, this Dutch guy that's flying from northern Japan region across the Pacific toward the United States about 2 days ago, maybe a day and a half ago now, filmed something at night over the Pacific, which they saw 2 hours ahead of them on their flight path, and they couldn't understand what it was. And he used a Nikon camera to film it. The seabed underneath the ocean there was glowing orange up into the sky. I mean, really bright orange at night. So he took pictures of it. One was an 8-second exposure. You'll see it on this link I'm just sending to you now to put onto your chat room.
All right.
And it should be there shortly. Now, when you look at these pictures, you're going to be amazed. Something is very unusual about this. I mean, they're hypothesizing that it might be a subsurface volcano, but if it is, it's big and it's got a lot of hot spots in it. I mean, it looks like a case of measles on the orange heated dome or whatever's happening there, which could be lava flows and things like that, I'm sure, but it just doesn't seem to follow all the normal volcanic actions you'd see under sea like that, boiling sea and lightning flashes, electrical discharge, things like that, and smoke. It was a very clear photo, just a glow. Of course, on the other hand, it might be something big like some kind of a craft. I don't know. Before they got over the site, when they were about an hour and a half, 2 hours out, I think he said he saw a bright beam of light shoot up from that spot up into the sky, and then it stopped. But he quickly, when he got over the area with his Nikon camera, did take those pictures. Have you got that link?
Stan, yes. Got it. Put it in the chat room. And, of course, I'm looking at this just for those who are driving or who are otherwise away from their computers. What this looks like in the distance, of course, is the ocean. You could see the horizon clearly. And it almost looks like a fire in the water, doesn't it? Like I see from far away, it looks like a little bit of a fire in the water. And then as you get closer, as the pilot gets closer, of course, it really consumes the entire line of sight from the water directly upward.
It looks like you might be taking it out of the cockpit too, as I recall. I mean, if you look at the images, doesn't that look like instrumentation from the third image across there? It was taken inside the cockpit there.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Yeah, it does seem to be that way. Yes.
Yeah, I see the overhead panels. He might have been shooting it to the rear seat, not the pilot seat. But I don't know where exactly he was. But they call him the Flying Dutchman, the Dutchman, and his name is Van Heist. And you'll see it on the copyright there of that. That's why I didn't put the photo up. I didn't want to steal his thunder, but I do want people to be aware that this may be something big in the offing related to all the sinkholes, the increase in seismic activity, the volcanic activity. I mean, we can talk about Iceland in a minute too. I mean, there's something really, really interesting going on there. Anyway, you can go to that website and you can look at it and read the comments that people have shared with us there. Some in Dutch and some in English, and see their thoughts on what it might be. And they even have a map there. The fourth one over shows where he took the photo, just south of Kamchatka Island there, Russia, but north of the Fukushima location, north of the North Island of Japan, etc. So it's at north 47, 33.0, east 159, 12.0, if you want to look at the lat long of it later.
Okay. And folks, I did repost that again for those because the chat room scrolls very quickly, and I'll do it again here in another couple of minutes, but fascinating photographs as referenced by Mr. Sandeo.
Okay. Let me just get over to and here's, okay, go to our show images page. I didn't tell you that again at the start here, Joe, but I've put some new images up and a couple of videos on the show images page. The top row, it shows a fissure in the ground, and you can see that it relative to the size of the road it split through and the cars and the people. And this happened about the 20th of August, and they started reporting it on the internet and in Google News, that kind of thing. Down on the eastern side of the Baja in Mexico, near Hermosillo, this crack just opened up. It's about 25 feet deep, and it runs for about 0.6 of a mile. That was another mistake I made on the show yesterday with Alex, or with David Knight on his show, in that I thought it went 12 kilometers, and it was like 1.2. Again, I misplaced a decimal point. Getting old, I guess. But anyway, this is only about 0.6 of a mile or 1 kilometer long. Now, the local seismologists there are saying that, well, we think that this was just due to a stream or riverbed underneath that caused it to collapse and fall down. And, maybe that's true. It looks like a very nice, split to me, a very sharp-edged split, which usually does indicate collapse into a cavity underneath. And in this case, it's not round like a normal sinkhole. It's just a stretch mark that just pulls apart. And it's probably the second one I've heard of in the last 2 years. I think it was down in South America somewhere. But this can also be a result of stretching of the earth. It could be due to drought, but then you don't see, when you look at that picture, you don't see, little platelets of dried mud or anything around there. You do see signs of water flow. Again, this could be due to the stretching of the Earth's surface as it expands. And where you had an underground water flow, it weakened the area underneath there, and so it split and fell into it all along there instead of in a round cavity, a round sinkhole. It did it along the long length of it. Anyway, this is important, I think, because it is several hundred miles south of the Salton Sea in Southern California. But we know that area, all from the Salton Sea all the way to the west coast from there and down the Baja, is a very thin part of the continental United States, and it is a part that just flaps like a rubber balloon, has been struck when an earthquake occurs in the Salton Sea area. And it's an inland sea, it's just called the Salton Sea. But anyway, it just seems to ring and rattle a lot longer than other places on the West Coast, which tells me that it's a very flimsy, very thin area all the way down there. We may see some more activity there in the next few weeks between Hermosillo and Salton Sea and, in Southern California. Anyway, that's my take on the splits and the sinkholes and things like that.
And I just want to remind folks, if you're not driving, the link directly to Sandeo.com. The show images for tonight is on Hagmann and Hagmann.com. Right underneath the link to Sandeo's website, it just says click here for show images. That's off of Hagmann and Hagmann.com. Takes you directly to Sandeo.com for the show images for tonight, folks. So,
and let me also thank Gary C. I don't put the last names on just for protection of them if I haven't cleared it. But one of your listeners has said, look, he's the one that pointed out this specific possible eruption site and all the photos we're talking about there. So thank you, Gary. We have a number of people that supply us information, like news reporters out there, which does help us keep track of a lot of things. With only two of us here, we can't cover everything and still live, you know.
Yeah, really. It's an amazing amount of information you do cover. I'd like to just revisit again, if you don't mind, the San Francisco, or the earthquake, the Napa earthquake. Really, I haven't heard much about damage, really damage assessments. Was there a lot of damage?
Only about $1 billion worth.
Boy, I feel really up on things now. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's first estimates, $1 billion.
$1 billion.
It hit a lot of the wine country, and it's been, golly, I mean, 1.5 million years since that particular activity or that fault line converted. And, you know, there are about another 15 that run parallel to it. So the next few days, let's keep our eyes on that and just see what the heck is happening.
My word. Okay. Wow.
And another thing, too, what you mentioned over to the show images page, I forgot. On the top row on the right, there is a picture of methane gas seeping up in the Atlantic Ocean. They say they think it might be due to increased microbial action underneath, but that they've also discovered methane hydrate in some of the places, which tells us that it's warming up down there. The core must be expanding, getting warmer, and releasing methane hydrates, which are flammable. So if we see some earthquakes, big ones in the Atlantic or elsewhere in the Pacific, in the North Pacific, where these smokers are operating and where the methane hydrate is converting from a frozen piece to bubbles of gas, we may actually see, as they saw down in New Guinea here a few years back, tsunamis that are on fire because the methane hydrate is in the tsunami and catches fire from the heat, of it all, and a wave of water topped with fire heads toward the shore. Could be quite spectacular.
Spectacular. Yeah. I was going to make a joke and say, when you're scuba diving, make sure your cigarettes are out when you're scuba diving. But to see a wall of water topped by fire, that's what you're saying? Oh my word!
Well, yeah, down in New Guinea they had it was only about 3 or 4 foot height tsunami wave when it came into the northern coast of New Guinea, but it had flames on it, and that does tell you that it had a methane gas in it, which had been ignited. And actually, kind of northeast of there, a U.S. submarine ran aground around that time because, according to their maps for the bathymetry of the area, they were several hundred feet above the sea bottom, and yet there was this large hump that raised up there. Well, I guess this was prior to the eruption, but they went aground in an uncharted hump. And then, look, things are moving around this planet. The earthquakes are increasing. The volcanoes are in places that, where they've been before, but they're doing some weird stuff. I mean, that one up at, Barderbung thing in Iceland. If you click on that photo I've got there on the second row, first photo, you can see a three-dimensional plot of the earthquakes underneath Barderbung, and by age and depth, whatever, and you can see that they're deep. But these things are starting to migrate, and they're migrating toward another magma pool to the north. I think it's to the northeast. Let me just take a look at that. Yes, it's on the northeast. And it's heading for another, it's called ASKJA, I guess it's Aska caldera. And right now there are people, when I say right now, they've got images of it showing people bathing in the hot waters of this caldera. this is a few months back, so it's not right this minute. I don't know if anybody's in there after reading the news there, but the magma eruption and the earthquakes are moving toward this caldera as well, which is kind of along the Atlantic ridge that goes through Iceland but does a bit of a dog leg, and that whole area seems to be under stress. And there's Hekla volcano as well. There's like 3 volcanoes that are at threat here by these magma intrusions. And, we're seeing 5.6 earthquake, 5.2 in the middle of Bartabunga right now. And again, thanks to Kim, who keeps me posting all this. She probably won't hear this till after she gets off work tonight, but another one of our field researchers that keeps track of this area and other areas across the Atlantic where things are happening. I seem to think she sent me something here on, what was it? It was on earthquakes occurring off the coast of Spain, west of, kind of north and west of Spain, of the Canaries in Spain. Anyway, it's out there where a fault line comes out of the Mediterranean, T-junctions into the north-south Atlantic ridge. I forget the name of the area, but they have had a number of earthquakes there, too, in the last month. So all these things do kind of tend to tell us that we've got a problem globally. And I'm looking here. I think I found her link while we're talking. I'll dive into it and see.
Yeah, I want to thank Kim as well. She's a tireless researcher. Sends us links and information all of the time. Very useful, and thank you so much, Kim, when you do hear this. God bless you.
Yeah,
your time.
You bet.
Goodness.
She's a trooper. Does this. Anyway, I can't find the link, but I think it might be the Azores. Is that in the middle of the Atlantic, North Atlantic, the Azores?
Geography class.
Yeah.
Come on, Azores. Yeah. I think yes, they would be, wouldn't they?
They are in the autonomous region of the Azores, one of the regions of Portugal, comprised of 9 volcanic islands situated in the North Atlantic Ocean.
North Atlantic, right.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Azores have been having a number of smaller earthquakes, a cluster of them as well, which is down the fault line from Iceland. And, okay, they may be, far apart or something like that, but then again, they're on the same, North Atlantic ridge, which you just got to raise questions, Well, anyway, there's just a lot of stuff happening out there that we're trying to correlate. A lot of us are. And we're coming up with similar answers. There's something wrong with the Earth, with the core of it, and also with the mantle, the surface that we live on. And I think it's going to be catastrophic and not gradual over millions of years. Whatever changes are coming are going to be pretty quick. Oh, and that's another thing. That is another thing. On the show images page, that are put up there, let me find what line it's on. I think it's on the first line, first picture, actually. Gone again, it is. I have to pull it up. Here we go.
The ice cores?
You see the ice cores. Okay.
Right.
Another chap sent me this, and for the life of me at the moment, I can't recall his name, but another helper, and I thank you, whoever you were that sent me this on the ice cores, showing the deuterium production from the sun and its rays, striking us and whatever. He's been correlating peaks of hot and cold, of deuterium production, etc., from the Vostok ice cores, and trying to see what you're looking at in this map is in thousands of years, and so he's gone back from right now on the left to 800,000 years ago, looking at ice cores, showing these peaks and magnetic flux, etc., from the sun, and showing the deuterium production, which is up at the top in the blue. And it shows us in a peak that is not peaked, it is hanging on. And he said, look, think about this. He says, if the sun is a variable output star, which it is, we know that now, it's not constant, it may be going through a phase where it will eject a certain amount of the core, of the outer surface of it, and restart, or reinitiate its fusion reactions, because it's normally, a fusion process on the sun that generates, the heat, the light, and the frequencies we get from it. And he says, looking at this graph, you can see where, it's maybe 110,000 years between events, and we're right on a node right now, and we're hanging on longer than we should. And it should drop back down and be a cooler period as the output drops down and the nuclear fusion reactions restart, or, regather strength, etc. Anyway, that's that graph there, and I'll have more on that when I've talked to him and discuss this a bit more.
So we're looking from this graph then, what this is telling me, if I'm reading this properly, is we could be entering into a cooler, an Earth cooling, if you will, global cooling.
Yeah, after it releases some of the surface of the sun and it throws it off in a kind of not like a supernova, but a mini nova type thing, where it throws off some junk and then cools and then starts again. It's like a slow bubbling thing, boom, and then build up steam again, and boom, every 110,000 years or so. And these graphs do indicate we are at a peak that is an extended peak for some reason. It's not a sharp peak like the years before. It has not declined, and it's hanging on. So I don't know why. I mean, they're just, he's quite correct in saying, let's see what's happening here. The methane ice cores, if you look at that, the green line across there right now, the methane ice core, or the methane presence here is high. It's as high as it's ever been in the last 800,000 years, and it's rounding the peak and not sharp. It's like the one 400,000 years ago. So you can just look at this graph and see that there are some things that indicate we're at a change in the state of the sun, which may eventually bring cooling, but as it changes state, it may give us a temporary heating, which, of course, the Hopi Indians have told us about. The Bible talks about the heat of the sun will burn the green trees and grass, about a third of them. All these things kind of add up, don't they?
Yeah, they do very nicely with, the compilation of shows that we've done together, Stan, and the information which you've given to all of us. The dots are connecting. It seems like where you started and where we are today, it's like a continuous conversation, to me at least, where you're stating, look, this is what's taking place, and in fact, everything that you've pretty much said is taking place, and then backing it up with with a lot of scientific data. So yeah, it's concerning to me. Go ahead.
Let me do it. Yeah, I found out the guy Fred S. is the one that sent this to me. It's been probably 18 years since we communicated, and he said, you better look at this. And he's been talking to an ex-NASA engineer and some other people about Skylab and how much attention they were paying to the sun with Skylab. The major reason for Skylab was to study the sun and and roughly why the neutrino counts from the sun are not where they should be. They're dropping. And that's when he said, okay, look, have a look at this graph. And, I thank him very much. And the graph I've got up on the site is another one I found that wasn't copyrighted or anything like that. But I'm going to send you a link here that you can throw into your chat room, which shows you what he sent me to look at these, what they call the Bostock insulation curves from 2004. And this paints the picture even better. And it's over just the last 400,000 years, showing the methane hydrate, methane gas production just going through the roof right now. It's the higher than it's been in 400,000 years from the ice cores they've studied at the Russian Vostok base in the South Pole. Anyway, these things for people that study graphs are quite good. And you should have that now, do you? Say yes.
Okay, yeah. I do. Yeah, I got it. Sorry, I just pressed the wrong button here. I do, and I just posted it in the chat, and I'm posting it one more time for people to copy and to put in their browsers. There you go. All right. Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting news day, hey?
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. And you know, right before showtime, we looked at the Drudge Report, and I don't know if this is totally off topic or if this is relevant to what we're talking about. I'll let you comment on this. On Drudge, headline: Obama pushes for UN climate rules without Congress. New York Times, tomorrow's New York Times is going to read where Obama is working to forge this sweeping international climate change agreement, but there won't be any constitutional requirement for Senate ratification of this treaty. So it's an end run.
Has that ever bothered him?
Yeah, that's true. What do you make of that? Something that's, I mean, what do you make of that? Aside from this overreach, where the Senate has got to ratify treaties, of course, but now he's saying, well, wait a minute, we're going to do this new UN climate rules.
It's just another, black market against this guy, so to speak.
All right.
Look, he couldn't do more to destroy the United States than he's doing right now. He just, everything he does is nasty, dictatorial, and favoring a new global world order that's going to support, Islamic terrorists.
Wow. Okay.
It's not Islam. It's not all Muslims. It's just the terrorists. It's a small percentage of them, but by golly, they are strong enough to cause us great grief, and he's just opening the door for them. You watch this week. Of course, he will push through that amnesty bill so that there'll be a last-minute rush across the border from Mexico.
Is that why? And I've got to ask you this: he came back from vacation for really 44 hours, based on my calculation. It's give or take 30, 40 minutes. Interesting. He's the 44th president. Came back for 44 hours. Unknown what he did. If you were to guess, would it be something with the sweeping amnesty?
Well, it could be a lot of things. Certainly it could be that. But he's up to something. And a lot of the times that they say he's playing golf, I mean, he may be actually playing golf, or they say he's on holiday, he may be doing something else, like getting his instructions from his minders about, what you're going to say next, what you're going to do next, because he might be bright, but he's not bright enough to do all this nonsense by himself. He's got people behind him pushing him in these directions, and he needs to have off-the-record conversations with them in training sessions so he can come back into the public eye. So again, as I say, he could be on a golf course, and with the security as it is, nobody would be close enough to know if it was him or his double. So, yeah, something's up.
I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was an article on a poll done that says the majority of Americans feel like Obama's golf shouldn't be criticized for the amount of time he golfs, or the majority of Americans don't mind him golfing so much. One of those two. I saw it earlier today. I was wondering who they were polling there with a question like that. And we reported last week about
people.
Yeah, we reported last week about he has golfed more, or is catching up to, only a couple, 20, 30 rounds away from golfing as much as Tiger Woods has golfed since the start of his presidency. Tiger Woods, obviously a professional golfer, does that for a living. It's quite eye-opening, in my opinion, to see the level of what some would say, carelessness, disconnect, just, completely doing what he wants to do rather than what is needed.
Laissez-faire, as the French would say, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we see it in the Congress, we see it in it's all throughout our governmental system. It's so corrupt, it's so lazy. It's just turned into a bureaucratic nightmare for anybody who wants to get anything done in a positive way. It works against the people and their best interest, and does so openly. And I don't think that's ever going to change. no matter who's president.
Well, yeah. Again, it's the people behind, the infrastructure that stays behind when the head changes. But they're still there. They're not elected. They're appointed, and they stay there.
Very true. And that's what, what, Stan, in talking with people this week, over the weekend, I had talked to a number of people who were just totally clueless about the power behind the faces of power. And I just wonder how many people really understand, as you have written in your book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, the infrastructure of power. Folks, if you haven't read Cosmic Conspiracy, grab a hold of that book via standeo.com, along with Dare to Prepare from Holly as well. But, what's wrong with people where they don't see this infrastructure?
What's the Bible say? None so blind as those who will not see.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. We've got neighbors like that all around. I mean, it's just they know what we do, and we see them once a month for dinner. 4 or 5 families, and they're just neighbors, and they kind of just choose to ignore it. I guess it's too hard or whatever. I don't understand.
Yeah, and the other thing too that I've just recently come across is this sudden. To me, it's sudden. Perhaps other people might say, well, no, it's always been there, but there seems to be a very dramatic shift in emotion behind the opinions of people, where they instead of talking about something intellectually, it's now very emotional, and they're very very adamant with their opinions as opposed to having a discussion. That's just what I've been viewing.
Well, emotion means that they haven't really researched the facts behind an issue. They just go on a gut feeling, and this is dangerous for any of us to do. That's why you need to look up your sources, and the ones you choose to believe, you better do it because you've traced it back as far as you can and find their data, their reasoning to be sound. And then you don't become emotional. You become like a debating, logical person saying, well, this is what I've found. What have you found? And cut the emotion out of it and just say, look, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we studied this and that correctly or incorrectly in your opinion. As one guy told me here recently, he says, when you're having debates with these people, you can come back with this line when they tell you that you're wrong and they're right. You can say, I'd agree with you, but then both of us would be wrong.
I love that.
Isn't that good?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I for the second time or third time this week, I refer to a quote from Thomas Sowell, who said, when you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. And I was struck by that quote because I think that's so true.
Yeah. That is interesting. Yeah.
And we have a society today, a church, well, I guess we'll say people who call themselves Christian, who have, as the scriptures will say, don't lose your zeal for the Lord. I think that's in Romans 8. We need to walk after the Spirit of the Lord, which will set us free. But instead, people walk after their own sinful lust and carnal nature, and the way of righteousness is lost to them. And in doing so, they believe a lie and are turned over to that lie. And also, that's one part. Then you have the other part of people who turn the Lord and His teachings into something that they want, the way they want the Lord to be, their own imagination of a God they serve, but it's not the God of the Bible. And in doing so, they also are basically dead in the spirit. And all this is continuing, as is the evil and wickedness, as Matthew 24 says, because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. And we have the wickedness, we have the indifferent people, we have and then the people that are changing the scriptures to fit what they want. All these different ways of believing and then non-believing versus those who believe correctly. And Steve said it. The remnant is, say you're sewing something, a shirt. The remnant is the material left over after the shirt's complete, and that gives us a good idea as to how few or how many Christians actually make it versus how many don't. And it's sad to think that so many will be lost due to their own desires and their own doing things their own way instead of the Lord's way.
You know, Joe, I agree with that, and I think in analyzing behavior of a lot of people that should know better, they aren't. They're lazy. They'll take the easy way out and enjoy life around them rather than ferret out the truth in the Scripture. I have probably given 15 families here in the last month instructions on how to start studying Hebrew and learn how to translate the Bible portions of it that are in Hebrew into English, and to be able to do that within 2 to 3 weeks using some very cheap $15 booklets and stuff you can get from Behrman House. And to me, this was so encouraging because these were young families saying, look, we want to know more about the original Bible without all the other stuff, and how do we study it? And so this course that these people you either give online or you get a booklet, as I say. I used it, and after 2 weeks, I was saying the alphabet in Hebrew. I knew my vowels, the little dots and dashes underneath the Hebrew letters. I could recognize flashcards. Okay, they'd hold up a card, and I'd say, okay, well, that means daber, and okay, this is, bizarre, and in Hebrew, it's not bizarre like our bizarre, but anyway, I was able to recognize these things and to say Hebrew prayers, which made it easier for me to look up in the Hebrew, English, Arabic, Chaldean lexicon, which has every conjugation, every adverb, every adjective, every noun that they're used in the Bible in those languages and the root of it. Well, now then, I don't need that book anymore because you can do it online with or on your own computer. You can download it off of a company in Texas called accordance.com, and they have the best selection of programs and Bibles in Hebrew and English and Greek. Just a tremendous scholarly collection for like $60. I bought the program and I brought it down. And I used this to find the Garden of Eden. It helped me to click on a Hebrew word, break it apart into letters just by a click of a button, and bang, show me all the derivatives of that word and where it came from and which language and cultures affected that word and what the older meanings of that word versus what they are now. And using that, your mind just almost explodes with discovery of what's hidden in the Hebrew of the Torah, of the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And anyway, there are pockets of Christians that are waking up and saying, right, we're not going to take all these new translations. We're going to go back to the grassroots, and it's what a rabbi would do. What they do, they tear things apart and look at the older meanings and debate in the yeshiva, rabbi school. They debate between each other. Why do you take this position? Why do I take that position? And then they agree to disagree. And of course, if they ever do agree, then and they're wrong, then both are wrong. But as my friend was saying. But anyway, I do think there's a small percentage of Christianity that's trying to get back to the basics.
I agree, and there are the English is basically a dead language. I'd say we've had the Bible was in Aramaic, it was in Latin, and it's been translated by different people for different reasons, and it says different things. You go from the NIV to the King James to the Geneva, and there are inconsistencies in the translations there, and we have the tools, especially with the computer, making it so much easier to go back and actually examine for ourselves what the meaning of each word is, the root meaning, and we can therefore get a better idea. And this is lost also because many people don't want to do the research for themselves, just like we see so many pastors introducing doctrines that are contrary to what scriptures say, but congregations can't discern between the truth and the lie because they don't do their own studying of the scriptures. And we're all called to study the scriptures diligently, pastor or congregant. There is no free or easy way to understand the Bible. It's a part of our faith, and we can't grow in our faith unless we're have a relationship with the Lord. And as I said, part of that is studying His Word.
Right. I used to be part of a church down in Australia. We built it up, brick by brick, literally. And our philosophy was, okay, we do have a pastor that, gives, main lectures most of the time, but members of the congregation would be selected to give a sermon on, and they would have to go and research their sermon in the Bible. And so it made people keep up a bit, and realize they might be called on to get up there and do a chat. And a lot of the home study groups, and the home study groups out in the farms, I visited over 100 of those in 1 year. They're like home meetings. They gather at one farm this Sunday and then the next Sunday another farm. But they all became, as their time rolled around, the lecturer of the day, the pastor of the day, to deliver a sermon on a subject. And so it improved their fellowship, it improved their knowledge, and they weren't lazy. They had to go and work, after being on the farm all day long, 7 days a week. They had to go work at night to study these things and to present a sermon, a meaningful one too. So I think a lot of this is laziness. Oh, it's too hard. I'll watch the football or whatever, and go fishing, and it's just too hard. And this is sad because they're leaving a lot on the table when they do that.
Yeah. Stan, I just got a bunch of questions here from listeners. In fact, let me toss this one out. This is one of my questions or statement, and I'll get your reaction on this. I had a pastor actually tell me, and I'm going to try to be as accurate in what he said as possible. Basically, he said, look, there's really no difference between the NIV and the King James Bible. In fact, if the NIV Bible brings people to the church, to God, then it's just as valuable as the King James Version. There's really nothing with respect to any type of there's really no difference, is what he was getting at in terms of meanings to the various passages in Scripture. What's your response to that? What would have been your response to that?
Well, I know there are errors in the King James Version. There are more errors in the NIV. I know that there was an attempt to make it say what the translators thought was the intent of the verse as they translated it, and I think they got it right in a lot of cases, most of the cases. But for instance, one specific example, when I was looking for the Garden of Eden, and I looked in the King James Bible in Genesis for the part that said where one river went around the land of Cush. In Hebrew it says, Cush, K-U-S-H. Well, the King James guys thought, well, that means, in their time, that means the land of Ethiopia, and just up from Ethiopia toward Egypt, that bank along the Red Sea. So they put in there in King James Version, and the river went around the land of Ethiopia. That's not what it said in the Hebrew. It's just no mistake. It says Cush. And because they didn't know there was a second Cush over in Iran, Iraq area, India, they didn't know about that. The King James Version was an error. And that was simply due to the fact that they didn't have enough information at the time. And, in fact, no one had the information until I made that discovery for the Garden of Eden report or lecture. So even the King James has problems. That's why we should, and I don't think they were intentional, but that's why we should be responsible and try to study the original language as close as we can, word by word, verse by verse. And I know people don't, a lot of Christians complain about Colonel R.B. Thiem's dogmatic approach to teaching Greek and Hebrew, and he's, of course, now passed on, but Hal Lindsey, myself, a number of other folks have studied his tapes and realized the value of knowing the tense and the meaning, of a lot of the Greek verses used in the New Testament. Some of the Aramaic, in fact, most of the Aramaic is difficult because in translating it, there are a number of ways to translate things, and even the Lord's Prayer has about 12 different translations from the Aramaic. some of them, or most of them, are pretty similar, but there are some variations which, scholars make because they think their version of the Aramaic is better. But it is a difficult language since it's not common these days, and that's why I say, do the best you can with the knowledge we have today and the tools at our disposal with the internet and digital computers and stuff. Try to update the translations yourself in light of current events and current knowledge. And this is not to denigrate Bibles that, like the NIV. I'm sure people have been saved because of it, and I would say, okay, if they were, that's great, and I'm sure they were. And after they've done that, they are like babes, still on, pablum or milk, and they need to be led to the meat of the matter, the steak of the Scriptures, which is getting down to the nitty-gritty and really investigating the Word as best you can. So I guess it's a long answer to your question.
No, and that's good. And the other part of that, the other side of that, as you mentioned, accordancebible.com. I pulled it up here. A lot of people wanted not only just the website, but the recommended package, because there are several packages here, different releases.
Okay. Yeah, it is accordancebible.com. I always forget to put that on there. But they're a group in Texas. You can ring them up on their phone, tell them where you are, what, like in your studies, what you want to learn. And you definitely want to be able to take, say, King James English Bible, digital form of it, the Hebrew Bible, and the Hebrew lexicon. There's a basic package you can get, I think, for $60 that has all that in it, and you can get more expensive packages if you're a scholar and you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty of even deeper studies. But that's all I got was the $60 package. I think, Joe, you've even got one form of Bible study like that that's free on the internet. And I don't know what they apply in the way of software, what books are offered, but I've used the Accordance Bible software for 20 years, I guess, and the updated version is just astounding, breathtaking what it can do. It saved me so many weeks and months of turning pages and searching back through and reading in fine print what this Hebrew verb was and that letter and now I just triple tap a little word and bang, up it comes right there in front of me, and in Hebrew and English, and I think, wow, I like this.
It makes it so much easier and so much more convenient for those who are studying the Word, and it's very helpful. Stan, I want to ask a question from a listener here before you go. This question says, can you ask Stan about the return of the double sun? And apparently there was a picture last year in August that a listener sent you, if you remember it, about this double sun.
I received several pictures like that. One of them was a reflection inside of a bus. I think it was in Korea or something. But the other double sun it didn't mean we had actually two suns out there. It was an image formed, a very rare image, by an atmospheric artifact in the country where the picture was taken, in my opinion. Okay, and I'm certainly not the world court on that. But if we were to have two suns right next to each other, we would see it more often than at sunset or any other time. And our astronomers, even the amateurs that did discover such a thing, which wouldn't be hard to miss, would present that. And I just don't think that it becomes visible for a couple of hours, in one part of the world, and then it goes away for a year or two. Anyway, again, I could be wrong and talking about the wrong email, but I got so many of them about that.
We have one of the only galaxies in the universe that does not have a binary system, and that's what a lot of people. Solar system. Most stars have a binary, like most stars like our sun have a binary or twin star also, and that's not something we have in this solar system, but many people allude to it, and Nibiru or Planet X as it's referred to. There's a lot of debate and stuff put out there, but and people claiming that they have recorded it in our solar system, which is what you're referring to. How they change and it's not visible now or was visible then. It's very convoluted.
Well, look, in defense of the binary star situation, NASA and JPL, NASA, and a number of other institutions, astronomical observatories, have been studying the problem of perturbations, changes, pressures in the orbit of our large gas giants from something way out there. And they have calculated this disturbance is probably outside of our stellar envelope for the sun. And in essence, the diameter of that stellar envelope is about 1 parsec, the distance light travels in a year. And outside that might be the binary dark star that we're talking about, and we might actually have a twin or a part of our binary system that we can't see because its light is in the infrared band and it's not emitting light in visible forms. The perturbations are there, and they do perturb things in the Oort belt as well, and it's still hotly debated in the proper mainstream scientific community as to whether we have that binary object out there somewhere. If it were in the inner system, we would know about it because even amateur astronomers would be picking up perturbations, changes, odd behavior in the orbits of planets and perhaps asteroids in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So, the jury's still out on that one, Joe. I don't think that we would see it in sunset like that and then it disappear the next day. That's just too rapid for these kind of things. But does it exist? It might well exist.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to comment on, Stan, or get into right before we let you go here since we're at the top of the hour?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to say on this earthquake over at Napa is that's close to San Francisco. It's also close to Sacramento, and the experts there are saying that if we got another quake stronger in the right area there around the Napa Valley, we could see the dam that holds the water of the Pacific Ocean flood into the San Joaquin Valley. And this is a real consideration because, you'd only have to get that dam to break maybe 8 foot, something like that, difference, 8 to 16 foot, and the Pacific Ocean would flow in there. And that kind of an earthquake in that area is of concern for that reason.
Wow.
It's only been, 25 years since they had the 6.9 at Loma Prieta. And this is a 6, down south there a bit, but south east, I guess it is. So with 15 parallel fault lines in that area, this could be a rather painful experience. Just another thing for people in that area to worry about. A lot of the scientists, the seismologists that are studying world tremblers or earthquakes and volcanoes are saying officially that we may be entering a time of greater seismic and volcanic activity. Some of the ones that had, like in Iceland, that have a 1,300-foot cover of a glacier and stuff, may melt away the cap that's been keeping them from erupting, and then they may go. And in fact, one of the images that Kim sent me this morning and yesterday evening showed like fissures in the ice cap over Bardabun, and you can see it from the air. She says, "What do you reckon? Is it we're going to lose the ice cap from this? It's going to melt it off?" I don't know, but it certainly looks like something is causing it to fracture apart. So these things, when you look at them all, the judgments that are spoken of in the Book of the Revelation are soon upon us. I can see the mechanisms that could cause them in play now.
And Stan, this might seem like a pretty basic question, but what you just said, you can see them in play right now. As opposed to maybe 20 years ago, things are mightily different, you would say?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
Much more ramped up.
Okay. Wow. Well,
hold on just a second. Hold on. Kim must have gotten back in time to pick up part of the program. She just sent a note on the Azores with a plot of the earthquakes there. And, yes, they are from a 3.9 down to about a 2.5. I've never been, yeah. Let's see here. No, sorry, that's the wrong one. Let me just see here. Yeah, 3, 2.5, 3.1, 2.8. Yeah, okay. I forget the link, but she did give it to me here, and I'm going to pass that across to Joe. You can share it on the chat channel. It's on its way now, and you'll be able to see there the plot of the earthquakes from that subtle fault line that comes from the Pillars of Hercules there, the Rock of Gibraltar, right west into the Atlantic Ridge, which, of course, as I said earlier, goes right up in through Iceland. So that whole area is a bit unstable. And when you put that together with the information we discussed, I think it was last year, about a Spanish seismologist or plate tectonic physicist saying that a new tectonic plate is forming between Spain and Florida somewhere there, between North Africa, Spain, and Florida. And we saw the thermal pattern showing up of a straight line across there in the sea surface temperatures. That tells us that there's pressures about to release there that are going to affect continents. This is going to be interesting. And, of course, the Canary Islands are in that area where the
Did we lose Stan?
I thought I lost audio.
He's still on there. Here it looks like.
Okay. There you go.
Stan? All right. We thought we lost you there for a second. Everything went quiet.
Oh, you might have done. I was chatting away there. Did you get that link I sent?
Yes, we got the link, and in fact, pass it along into the chat. What I'll do again here is because it goes rather fast, I'll put it back into the chat about the Azores there. Very interesting. Wow. Okay.
Okay, hold on a second. Another one of your listeners just sent in a link to an interlinear scripture analyzer for Hebrew and Greek scripture study. Use it at King James along with the literal translation, pronunciation, the original Greek, and that. Put that into your chat room. If I probably didn't do that right. Just a second. Let me take off a caret there, and it'll work. There it comes. Okay, I've sent you the correct one of that. And if you want to look at, you're asking about King James versus NIV, and the differences. There are a number of differences that you can analyze using something called eSword. And I'll just get that over to you here as well.
Yeah, that's the program that I have, Stan, that you were referring to.
Okay, well, all those apparently, Kyle, thank you for sending those in, could be of use to people wanting to study this in more detail. And it's time, folks. If you can just make time to get into the scriptures and study what they really mean, it'll be its own reward to you. Its own reward.
Very
Absolutely.
Good, sir. My gosh. Okay. I'm in the process of putting that up into the chat channel as well. Stan, I just want to thank you so much for being a guest every Tuesday and for hanging in there and giving us this information that you're not going to hear on the evening news. You're not going to hear anywhere else. We feel so fortunate to have you. Your interpretation of events, especially as they relate to the Bible and history and all of this. This is something we need to be paying attention to.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, thank you guys for letting me come on again.
Absolutely, sir. And give our best to Holly. And, of course, Holly's book, Dare to Prepare, needed now more than ever, as well as your book, Cosmic Conspiracy. We need to get that as well. So, Stan, thank you so much. StanDeo.com. And
God bless
you. God bless you, my friend. Folks, with a link to StanDeo.com and the show images off of Hagmann and Hagmann.com.
All right, Stan, thanks, and God bless. We're going to be right back after these short messages. Just want to say a quick hello to Mike. look forward to hearing from you soon. I know you're indisposed for the next couple of weeks, but thanks for sending a message and letting me know you will be around here shortly. Look forward to hearing from you. With that, we'll be right back after these short messages. We are going to take your calls, get into a little bit of news, and close out the show strong.
Gentlemen, to the third and final hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I'm Doug Hagmann in studio with Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank Marie J. Marie, thank you very much. Kind of an I told you so moment here when Dave Hodges was on talking about vaccines and the dry runs. And she writes, and I remember this too. I remember this vividly, okay, because I looked at this and I had to do a double take and triple take. And in fact, I printed it out, the email itself, and put it aside. But she writes, I told you when I was, let's see here, I told you over a year ago that there was a soldier girl talking about drill with roadblocks to enforce mandatory vaccines. There are a few extra words and letters in that email, but got your message there, Maria. Thank you so much. You are absolutely correct. Also from Amanda. Amanda, thanks for sending in the email. Remember Doc Marquis talking about the Illuminati card game, the card with the Grim Reaper in a black cloud with a shot injector and the CDC pictured. Remember that? I remember that. In fact, I had spoken just last week to Doc Marquis on the phone to endorse his his DVD. Thank you. Sorry about that. Going through his DVD, it's a 4.5-hour long DVD, and I've been going through it. It's just an incredible, and I mean an incredibly, I don't want to say complex, because he really makes it simple, but it's information-packed, I guess is what the word is. But Amanda, thank you very much for that information. She writes also, maybe this is the way the economy collapses. Airline travel was stopped. Food deliveries stopped due to quarantine. Martial law in disguise. Amanda, you're right on. We do have, I believe, one of the most intelligent audiences in the world. And Pamela G. writes this, don't let anyone say there are errors in the Bible. And I'm not sure we're saying that there are errors in the Bible. I think there are differences in translations.
Exactly what Stan is talking about. It's not that there's errors as far as anything that the Lord has said to his prophets, or what the errors are, or here and there in the Bible there are certain words which have different meanings, but some of them are mistranslated from Latin to English. And when you look at and I'll give you an example, in the book of Job, there is a verse where it talks about mourning, like the word, I'm mourning of the loss of whatever. Well, if you translate that, look at the root meaning of that word, the word is something completely different than mourning. And I don't have my notebook in front of me that has it, the exact verse, but I'll find it before the end of the show. I think it's more of the human errors of not, properly, because, you had the book written in 3 different languages, the Bible. And from over a long period of time.
Languages, yes.
And between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And then you have it translated into different languages. And there can be mistakes with translating proper words.
That's right.
It has the same message. It has the same idea, but there are when looking at the root words with the concordance, there are not options, but it gives you
differences.
Right, differences of this. What are they called? Synonyms of the same word.
Right, and trust me, Pamela, we believe that the Bible, the Bible is the inerrant Word of God. So please make no mistake about that. We certainly believe that 100%. And we realize too that In the larger sense, the Bible is the Word of God, the inerrant Word of God. That's it, period. God said it, I believe it, that's it, period. I mean, that's one of my favorite phrases. God said it, I believe it, that's it, period. End of story. And the minor or the transliteration differences or translation differences, well, that's something totally different altogether. So that's so please don't take offense to that. We're not saying at all. And you're right. There are enough excuses for people to assail the Word of God. We don't need to add, to that. And I agree with that. So, all right. A lot of news. Tomorrow night, by the way, we're going to get into, Joe and I have not talked about this, but there are a couple of issues that we're going to get into, I believe, in depth. And I think that really we need to have a really good analysis of the current situation, the world situation, looking at the big picture, connecting some important dots tomorrow night without any guess, without any type of distraction. Because I really think what's taking place right now, we are at the cusp of, in my view, folks, I believe that we are perhaps at the precipice of the most dangerous time since, well, over the last decade and a half. I mean, and that includes the time around 9/11. I do believe that we have, it was explained to me this way, and I know I'm probably going to butcher it. I referenced it the other day. If you take the country and imagine the country, the United States, for example, and all of its protectorates on a roulette wheel, just superimpose a map of the country over a roulette wheel, and everyone's seen a roulette wheel. And the ball is the event, whatever the event might be, or ISIS perhaps, or the catalyst for a terrorist attack. On the outside is, I don't know, nuclear, biological, chemical. Red is, or let me rephrase that, black would be biological or chemical, and red would be nuclear. This is where we are. The ball is in motion. The roulette wheel is in motion, and right now that ball is just kind of bouncing around within the roulette wheel, waiting to land on a red or black number. And hey, 17 might be what? Chicago, Washington. 19 might be New York. This is where we are right now. The threat is extremely real. People talk about false flags. We've seen so many false flags over the last century. I mean, you can go back to Pearl Harbor, where obviously not a false flag, but we had some, and history does show that we had some warning leading up to Pearl Harbor, Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, you name it, so many things. But right now, it's something since 9/11 when people have been saying, or when the elected officials, for example, have been saying, oh, hey, get ready, man, we're going to get hit, and nothing happens. Or something on a very small, minor scale happens where it's led by the FBI or some other government agency. I believe now, personally, based on research, talking with sources, I believe something huge is about ready to happen. Taking out a city type huge. That's my thought. This is based on multiple sources, because you can only cry wolf so many times. But the intent here is to galvanize the American public.
I don't know if you saw today, maybe it was yesterday, the latest rhetoric about ISIS and the threat they pose to the United States. Some have said to expect something 10 times worse than in 9/11. And now some are saying that they do not really pose as much of a threat as some others are saying, I guess. and you have this constant back and forth, which is all part of the theater.
Exactly.
You have talking heads on the right or the left or the center or up or down. They could be inherently good with good intentions, or they could be bad, intentionally deceiving, or they could just be doing their job, what they're paid to do, what they're paid to say. Either way, the focus of the American people is on all these different pundits, all their different interpretations of and things that are going to happen, that could happen, that might happen. And all of this, in the grand scheme of things, is a distraction if we don't have our spiritual house in order first. And we are called to understand the devices of Satan and pay attention to the things of this world. But what good is it to us if our eternal destination is not taken care of first? If we do not have our relationship with the Lord first, what difference does it make if we understand the devices and deceptions going on in the world, because we're already deceived spiritually?
But Joe, I take it this. No, we've had this discussion before. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think most people who listen to this program can.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is there are people out there who go to a church on Sunday, or and that's as much of the Bible and the Word or the prayer they're going to do in a week. Yet they worry about everything that's happening in the world stage, studying and researching, trying to find out the truth of different matters on issues of Earth.
Yeah.
When they don't have a clear understanding of their spiritual nature and what the Lord says and how to handle these things. It's like
right.
I don't want to make an analogy, but we need to make sure that we do the research, that we do and have the understanding and the devotion to the Bible and to studying His Word, and that in itself will help us understand everything else that's going on.
Exactly. We have to have strong faith, and that comes from studying the Word of God, and of course having faith in God will get us through these times that we are about to enter into. Without being rooted in the Word, we're not going to be able to come out the other side with any type of life, whether it's physical or spiritual life. I mean, I think I just slaughtered that whole sentence. But what I'm saying is, what we need to do is we need to understand. See, we can look at what's going on, and I think a lot of people. There are radio shows who explain what's going. They explain what's going on a global scale, on an economic level, and domestically, and so on and so forth. But without that being rooted in the biblical aspect of things, that's a huge component. That is the root of all evil, as Steve says.
It explains why the people in the mainstream media will sit here and dissect ISIS and the different things we're doing in different countries, but the root of these issues all stem from the Bible themselves, and conveniently they're left out of all the explanations or solutions or assessments in the government and the media that promotes or pushes what the government wants them to. So, it's like trying to find the answer to the math problem 2 + 2, but never, breaking it down.
Never knowing the base.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why I believe too, the evil that's out there, and I'll close with this, that the evil that's out there right now, they are using the Bible to their advantage. They're convoluting the Word of God, deliberately convoluting the Word of God. And you can see this too, at least in my view. This is just my own personal assessment based on my learning. And I'm kind of, I don't know, believe me, I don't know. The more I think I know, the less I realize I know. But it's amazing to me when you hear people talk, for example, about, I'll just throw one subject out there, and this way this will keep me reading email, or I'll be reading emails all night from this now. But I just read something about a Christian singer saying, a British Christian singer saying that she's a lesbian.
She was a prominent. There's been three instances of popular Christian singers who have come out to be gay, and she took it a step further. Though she has threatened to sue or has done something, either to a church, saying, you need to accept my gayness, and or else I'll take legal, actions. Which is, it's crazy. People need to understand something, that we have had governments instituted and made by man since the beginning of our existence here on Earth, from the Tower of Babel and Nimrod to America as a republic, from Rome as a republic to Hitler as a dictatorship. There's all these different governments, all these different systems and forms of these systems, but no matter what they call them, whether monarchy or republics, democracies or dictatorships, they all have the same leader behind them. They all have the same influence behind them. They are instituted, and they are deceptive. They all have the same ending. Look at the Republic of Rome. That, crashed, and genocides and countless atrocities were committed, just as it was in communist countries and dictatorships. They all have the same ending. And that's because of the decay of men, the greed, the lust for power and other comforts of this world, rather than trying to please God. And
the perversion of the Word, the perversion of the Bible as well, the Word of God, is in the case, in my view, is in the case of what you sent me about the Christian evangelist singers saying, well, if Jesus was here, and I was reading some of the comments to the story, if Jesus walked among us today, he would be walking with the gay, lesbian, transgendered groups. Well, that may very well be so, but he certainly would not accept the behavior of those people. Or accept the behavior, which is an abomination of God. So it's interesting. I guess the only reason, and I'll just close it out by saying, the perversion of the word to me is so grave that the enemy, our enemy, to understand the Bible is to understand the architecture of the war that is being waged against us. I don't know if that makes sense, but you need to understand the Bible. If for example, the military strategists and these geopolitical analysts that are on these MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News, whatever channel you might watch, absent of the biblical influence of the current events, we've got nothing. It's just talk. You've got to understand, to me at least, what the Bible says and what God.
Not to you at least, to what the Lord says we need to do. But yes, you're right.
Well, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
As Steve always says, and as the Scripture states, and Steve stresses this, that my people perish for the lack of knowledge. It's not for and ever learning but never able to come to the truth. It doesn't say that they're learning falsehoods. It says that they're constantly learning, never able to come to the truth, and they perish for still a lack of knowledge. Well, what kind of knowledge can you be learning, even in Scripture, but yet not ever coming to the truth? It is a matter of the heart. It is a matter of your will, your thoughts, your imaginations versus conforming to what the Lord wants us to instead of conforming to what the world wants. And this was an issue even after the Lord was crucified and the first church established, or the apostles, getting together. There's, I believe it's John. He's talking about how, he's amazed at how soon that the disciples have been moved away into another gospel that is contrary to the Lord. And this is this is in the first century. And if you have in the first century disciples or apostles who witnessed the death and resurrection of the Lord, teaching contrary gospels to what he taught that soon after his death and resurrection, what does that say about 2,000 years later?
Yeah, that's right. It's what is it? The evolution or the devolving of, or the decaying, gradual decaying.
What most call evolution. They say we were created by nothing and we're evolving as a people. We are devolving as a people, and it is so evident. The only thing that is evolving is the wickedness, blindness, and ignorance, selfishness, greed, and hate on earth.
That's right. And speaking of that, Russ Dizdar is going to be on with us. When is he going to be on? Because
Thursday. He'll be on Thursday. L.A. Marzulli will be on Monday.
Okay. I can't. Monday's Labor Day, by the way.
Yeah, we talked about that. I talked about that with L.A. and I told him, we don't skip the show for holidays, and he said, well, if you're going to be on, I'll come on too. So.
Well, just folks, when you have your barbecue, just take us out there and let the family battles begin over doctrine. But of course, LA will be very interesting in terms of his subject matter. But Thursday, Russ Dizdar talking about, and of course, his website, Shatter the Darkness. I got to tell you, Russ Dizdar is one of the most amazing men I've ever met in my life. Joe, you and I have had personal conversations.
Yeah, I love Russ. He's the most genuine person, the most compassionate, caring, and loving person. He only wants, the best for people. And not only that, he is a street minister. He goes out and teaches and shares the good news of the Lord with those who are willing to listen. And he is a person who rescues people out of situations that are unimaginable.
Yeah, it's some of the things that I'll say this. Working with him, I've had the pleasure of working with him. Pleasure might not be the right word, but on satanic ritual abuse cases where, folks, you might watch this stuff on television about multiple personalities, and folks, you've heard the stories, but some of the things that I've seen him investigate, assisted him in the investigation on, this stuff is real. It's happening today. In fact, it's growing in terms of it's growing. The satanic ritual abuse, the Satanism, the whole. That whole area of satanic, do I want to say crime? That's not even the right word. This cloud, the satanic cloud, is growing, and it's becoming more deadly by the day. And Russ will walk right into that, and hopefully he'll share some of his accounts with us on Thursday.
Yeah, and much of what he talked about at the Montana conference, and I just watched the presentation. I've watched it twice now since we've gotten the DVD. But, his message is so, I want to say excellent. It's fantastic, and it's eye-opening. And it should shake the people who are on the fence into, pushing themselves harder to learn and to seek out what is true, because we are in the last days. We are in what he calls the Black Awakening, which will and can happen at any moment. I mean, what is stopping the darkness that we know is here? We see there is a huge apostasy going on in the church and the society. The social and moral decline or care of anyone or most people is gone, people are turned into heathens. You have, for fun, what teenagers do now are run around and knock people out. Look at the knockout game. Old ladies, pregnant women, just inhumane, vulgar. Everything in our society has turned this way, and it's due to the increase of people being opened up to these ideas through music, TV, and the influence of other people. When we're told not to look to people, we're told to look to the Lord. But what he talks about is the Black Awakening, a time when the red horse of the apocalypse rides and peace is taken from the earth, and how fast and evil this time will be, nothing like we have ever seen before. And it is a reality, and it will happen at some point. The only thing we can do is pray that we are not a part of it, that the Lord hides us in whatever way he does, because it says in the Bible, peace will be taken from the earth. Brother will kill brother. Right. Family will kill family.
Yeah, and I've got to say that I've had the opportunity to look at some of the things that Russ is doing in this area, in our area where we're at, northeastern Pennsylvania, northwestern Pennsylvania, northeastern Ohio. What am I saying? Well, I guess we moved there for a minute. No, northwestern Pennsylvania, northeastern Ohio. I was thinking about northeastern Ohio because of thinking about what's going on there, and just imagine things like Katy Perry selling her soul to the devil, and of course, in for success. Well, imagine that on a more, do I say more realistic level, or at least more understandable level? If you got like normal people, not celebrities. I'm talking about business people who are extremely involved deeply into this kind of behavior, and they have witches and sorcerers, and I'm using these terms rather loosely, but it's very real, and the satanic influence is growing, and it really kind of got my attention because of some of the satanic things I've seen here in the criminal element is, and you won't hear about this in your newspaper or on television. It's intentionally blocked out. Where
they have satanic crime, police area. Yeah. How long ago did that start? That was never anything of a part of law enforcement. They have satanic crime divisions.
Well, again, you won't hear about this, and some of them are loosely knit, some of them are federalized. They'll come in, they'll bring people in from, depending on your area, they'll bring people in from D.C., but none of these statistics really are kept. And in fact, if you go back, folks, and listen to Detective John Cameron, who we had on, and if you order the book about Edward Wayne Edwards and his killing spree, imagine that taking place all around us, and that is taking place all around us today. There are numerous Edward Wayne Edwards in our midst right now, and it's a pretty frightening situation when you think about it, because it's demonic. It's totally demonic. And then we see this on a federal, on a national level and an international level. But on the national level, you see it with in the White House. You see it just all over the place. So anyway, let's move on.
The headline on Drudge that we were referring to, Obama pursuing climate action in accord in lieu of treaty, the article has since been released, or a article from the New York Times. It says the Obama administration is working to forge a sweeping international climate change agreement to compel nations to cut their plant warning fossil fuel emissions, but without ratification from Congress. In preparation for this agreement to be signed at the United Nations Summit in 2015 in Paris, the negotiators are meeting with diplomats from countries to broker a deal to commit some of the world's largest economies to enact laws that reduce their carbon pollution. But under the Constitution, a president may enter into a legally binding treaty only if it is approved by 2/3 majority of the Senate. To sidestep that requirement, President Obama, or the renegade-in-chief, climate negotiators are devising what they call a politically binding deal that would name and shame countries into cutting their emission. The deal will face strong objections from Republicans on Capitol Hill for poorer countries around the world, but negotiators say it may be the only realistic path. It goes on to say, if you want a deal that includes all the major countries, including the U.S., you can't realistically pursue a legally binding treaty at this time. This is from Paul Bledos, a top climate change official in the Clinton administration who works closely with the Obama White House on international climate change policies. There's a strong understanding of the difficulties of the U.S. situation and a willingness to work with the U.S. to get out of this impasse. It goes on to say.
Right. And Drudge has got the flashing light up there. And now, folks, wouldn't you say that this is treasonous, this is seditious, to circumvent Congress, to essentially ratify a treaty? This is not really ratifying a treaty. This is so is his being president. So is his being the head of the UN Security Council while he was sitting president. So is his IRS, Fast and Furious, and all these other scandals we see. So, I mean, how far can he go before even people or his supporters are going to say, this is enough. This is crazy. We've had enough of this, and this has to stop. Could he be impeached? I don't believe so. Impeached? No. Arrested? Yes. And I'm very serious about that. What he's doing, and not just
Holder going to arrest him?
No, but what he's doing is, I've never seen anything like this. By the way, I want to say hello to Benjamin P. listening live from Brisbane. For the geographically challenged, Brisbane, of course, is in Central America. I'm just kidding. Brisbane is in I believe it's in Queensland, Australia. Yeah. Actually, it's the
Benjamin,
capital.
You said?
That's right, Benjamin P. listening from Brisbane, the capital and most populous city of the Australian state of Queensland, listening live. Thank you so much for checking in with us.
I'm finding the name of the other person who just sent us a message letting us know they're listening from Australia also. Lots of people from other countries have been tuning in, and if you are listening from another country, please let us know. We love to hear it. We love to hear not that or how far that this show is spreading, and it is just such a blessing to know that this is able to be broadcast all across the world, thanks to the internet. But the listeners from around the world are tuning in and sharing the news about the show with their friends and family. And, we are growing in local listeners and international listeners. Not that growing is important, but it tells me that there are a group of people searching.
Thirst for,
right.
Yeah, thirst for knowledge. And just as you're looking for knowledge, so are we. And I'm going to drive that point home because a lot of people come to us for the truth and for answers. And please just understand this. As you're looking for the truth and for the answers, we are as well. We don't have all the answers. All we're attempting to do is dig through the muck and mire and at least present to you the information that we've found, and you take it and you do with it what you will, pray about it, and of course research it for yourself. This is what we do, and it's the growth of this show is not because of us. It's even in spite of us, I suppose, if you know what I mean. So it's really not even our show. It's
your show.
No, it's not. It's not. It's our. This show belongs to all of the listeners.
That's what I said. Not your show, their show.
Oh. You weren't pointing at me, were you?
No.
Okay.
A couple of headlines
right.
here real quick as we're nearing the end of the program. that I think are important. One, Iran promises military response to alleged Israeli dome. Iran is military general has threatened a surprise attack on Israel, and they vowed from Tehran they would take military action against Israel in response to the alleged Israeli dome that was shot down in Iran on Sunday. It says Iran will not give a diplomatic response, but will air its grievances with Israel on the battlefield. Something that we know tensions continue to be rising between those countries, and that there will be a military action taken one way or the other eventually. Also, I thought this was very interesting. Tanks on the street. Remember the program that gives the military gives local police departments all the military surplus goods that we've seen rolled out in Ferguson and other areas. Well, that's part of the Defense Department Program 1033. And it has now come out that the police are required to use this equipment within 1 year of getting it, or they have to return it. How interesting is that?
Sorry, did you just fall asleep?
No,
I was looking at my control here. I've got, and believe it or not,
Anyway, it says the form states that the application to participate in 1033 properly obtained under this SPO must be placed into use within 1 year of the receipt unless conditions of the property renders it unusable. Also, it goes on to say that the state must coordinate or transfer the property to another jurisdiction, the nearest department without that equipment if they do not use it. And it goes on to say here, a senior counsel of the American Civil Liberties Union named Kara Dansky wrote about, she says, any training that government provides in terms of the use of equipment or any oversight in terms of safeguards regarding the equipment by the Defense Department this power has been abused. There are also reports that this military equipment has been sold on the black market by some local departments, and much of the equipment is missing in many departments. That's
interesting.
Use it or lose it, they say, though, when it comes to this military equipment provided by the Department of Defense to local law enforcement.
Very, very interesting. Wow. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
This is one story that I wanted to talk to you about before the show. It pertains to Oklahoma City bombing. Have you seen this? The claims of the second accomplice and FBI intimidation. The FBI has been ordered to investigate allegations that claim that the agency intimidated a witness and compelled him not to testify at a trial over evidence related to the OKC bombing. According to the Salt Lake Tribune, U.S. District Judge Clark Waddups scheduled a November 13th hearing on the matter, in which Utah Attorney Jesse Trenadu accused the FBI of threatening to eliminate a former undercover agent's health benefits if he took the stand. And this was...
what?
Yeah. The core issue is Trenadu claims the FBI has surveillance video revealing McVeigh carrying out the Oklahoma City bombing with an accomplice. The FBI admittedly denies such a video
Stop
exists.
Right there. Wait. Did we or did we not look into the eyes of the accomplice when we were in the outskirts of Boston?
Yeah.
Not in Boston Central, although we were in the city of Boston.
It was a suburb, yeah.
Right, but
no.
I'll just tell the people this, folks. John Doe 2 does exist, is walking around, and believe me, he is of, I would say, Iraqi descent.
Now, you remember maybe 6 months or so ago that we played a audio clip that talked about the FBI saying they had destroyed the video, surveillance video?
Right.
Well, now they are involved in witness intimidation. John Matthews was scheduled to testify regarding this alleged video in July, but withdrew at the last minute. And a freelance journalist, questioned Matthews about the absence, and he was told he should take a vacation, and if he testified, would suffer from a case of the I don't remembers.
This is ridiculous. This is a sourced story, authenticated report.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And
okay.
It goes on to say the proceeding is going to document whether or not there was any inappropriate contact with Mr. Matthews. No one is being accused at this point, but questions will be raised and being given the opportunity to be answered. JETRADIO is the, I believe he's the brother.
The brother, that's correct.
Okay.
That's the brother of the police officer.
But yeah, there was obviously not only more than one person that was involved in this. It goes on to say here that the Kenneth JETRADIO was taken into the FBI custody in the months following the bombing. Kenneth reportedly looked extremely similar to the description given by witnesses regarding the second bombing suspect, dubbed John Doe No. 2, although no such suspect was ever pinpointed. And
the FBI knows exactly. I can tell you this: the FBI knows exactly who John Doe 2 is, where he lives, or where he lived. The FBI had a complete dossier on John Doe No. 2, and I can verify that because we have the other half of it, or the other copy of it.
There are other sources and documents that state this video exists, including a Secret Service agent who described in the video two persons getting out of the rental truck minutes before the bomb went off. So interesting. Hopefully something of truth comes from this.
We will get more into this. In fact,
maybe we can try to get JETRADIO on.
Exactly. But I think some of this will work into what we'll talk about tomorrow, folks. We had a great show tonight. We're at the end of the program. I just want to say I would just want to thank Dave Hodges and, of course, thank Stan Dale for coming on tonight. I want to say God bless you, each and every one of you, for listening. And my goodness, so much news, so much information to really to dissect and to talk about tomorrow. So please tune in tomorrow for some very important information.
Until then, God bless and stay safe. Have a great night. We'll see you back here 8 p.m. tomorrow. And then Thursday, Russ Dizdar.